Doesn't mean it's okay.
Morning. Everybody's here, so we get this in, we have a quorum, we will get the, I call to order the Personnel Committee meeting for the Washington County Board of Supervisors for October 10th, 2024. And I'll call finance to order. So we will start off with call to order. We've done that. Exception of minutes for the Personnel Committee, for September 12th, 2024. Moved by Jim, we have a second. Mr. Hogan, is there any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wait.
we're not joining.
Wait, we're not joined. I can't second. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. I didn't have this.
Somebody.
Jay.
No, somebody for
Jay.
Jay.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you. Bail this out. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Can't vote either.
I can jump right in.
Okay. We'll start with Stephanie at this point.
So we
Sorry.
have, two backfills, one for aging services assistant per diem vacated on September 30th, resignation. And in probation, a probation officer vacated on September 14th due to a resignation. That's all for backfills.
Okay. Capital pattern changes.
So, the safety officer positions, this was moved from the joint meeting with public safety and finance. We have a possible staffing pattern change to remove the senior safety officer and safety officer from the county attorney and move to public safety.
We have a motion for that, change. Mr. Nolan, you have a second? Second discussion. Okay, for discussion. Is there any discussion? Yes.
Why? I just haven't heard why.
Where's, Tim, you had the comments on that?
Sure. So in our meetings with the county administrator, when we looked at budget stuff this year, we currently have a need for some assistance on the emergency management side and all the things we're being tasked to do with on behalf of the county and the counties. We see a lot of synergy between what we do or the operations that we perform on the emergency management side and on the 911 side of the house with the safety officers. As far as education, prevention, there's a lot more under the hood. We had saw in the last couple of years, a lot more of us working together for inside and outside, that was inside the county operations and outside of the public. And I thought maybe a potential, rather than asking for a whole nother person, that we look at exploring this for a year and see if this works before we need to ask for another person.
Can I follow up on that? Well, it's my understanding that the salary of that position comes out of workman's comp, which is split. Now it's gonna come. No, what?
That won't change.
Stays right where it was.
No budgetary changes, gonna continue coming out of the workers' comp budget as it does now. Just a staffing pattern change.
They'll even be in the same office.
No fiscal impact at all.
Well, then why then, if it's emergency management, but the towns are gonna have to pay part of the county's emergency management
No,
program?
You always have,
How?
with the county budget.
Yeah, the county, right, through the county budget.
Right.
So you just shift.
You're still gonna pay it the same way. You're just gonna pay the safety officer to be the safety
Well, now,
officer.
wait a
the
minute,
same
I
way.
thought if you had, every town has different rates due to their claims,
You do on workers'
and
comp.
that won't change?
No,
the positions themselves aren't changing, the duties of the positions aren't changing at all. It's just the efficiency of having the two groups working together should help on a day-to-day basis as they can use each other as resources.
Well, let's compare it to LDC and economic development being in the same place. Same idea.
any further discussion?
And maybe
Charles, you have one? Yes, you may.
I think I know where this is going, but I do have to demonstrate to the rest of my staff that despite insurmountable odds, I'm going to continue to fight for them. As has been previously stated by the chairman, this position should be in a Department of Global Reach. Those three departments are the treasurer, the administrator, and my office. As the vice chairman said, there clearly is a need. That need should be filled. And I think we all know that, as the deputy director indicated, it's going to take a year to train a new person. Senior safety officers retiring 2 years, you're going to have to train a new person anyway. But there's a couple other aspects to this that maybe I didn't explain clearly enough previously. The first is with regard to sexual harassment complaints, which the safety officers currently investigate. If they are in the public safety department, there could be a chilling effect. With them being in my department, somebody reporting a complaint knows it's already in the county attorney's office. It's going to remain confidential. If they're going to make a complaint, it's going to public safety. The initial response may be, why does public safety need to know about it? But the bigger concern is that once there's a conversation between the safety officer and the department head or deputy department head, which presumably something major like that would happen, attorney-client privilege is lost. If there was a lawsuit, any conversations between the safety officer and public safety director, deputy director are discoverable, whether it's emails, oral statements, written statements, whether they were on personal phones or work phones, work material. And that is something I can't control once that happens. And that could bring what could be a small problem that we could nip into the bud into a bigger and more expensive problem.
Before you go on, Dan, can I just ask you, what are you referencing? Because right now I guess I'm not clear on what it is where that would be a case, because we currently work with many departments with the safety officer. So I'm not
Right, but
really
I'm saying
sure.
specifically with regard to a potential sexual harassment.
So those, thankfully.
If things
are
go to
few
litigation,
and far between, and legal counsel is always involved in those investigations anyway, always has been. County attorney's always been involved, as the personnel officer and the administrator.
yes,
So that's not gonna change.
but the safety officer, as it stands right now, reports directly to me.
So
And while
that's not gonna change.
well, it would, because I don't know of any county employee that reports directly to a different department head.
So I misspoke. Although that is gonna change, that they would still report to public safety, but as far as like any legal matters like that, that doesn't have to change. Their resources that are currently involved in those matters still would be, which would be you, me.
Right, but
personnel
the
officer.
point is,
Those-
something that might be covered by attorney-client privilege or work product privilege, if it remains in my department, will no longer be applicable. If there's a conversation between Phil and I right now, it's within the department, it's privileged. If Phil and Tim have a discussion about it, and then it comes to me, the privilege is gone because it's been reported to somebody else.
So in day-to-day matters, the director of public safety and deputy director would not be involved in any kind of sexual harassment cases. It would only be in the matter if both of our safety officers were not at work, which doesn't happen very often. Would there be that resource?
Well, I would think if there's, the general supervision of the department, what are you doing? I'm investigating this complaint about this. That occurs, if there's any details given, there's no longer privilege attached.
I know I totally understand what you're saying, Dan, and respect that, and I think, like we said before, we can address that with policy, no problem, we live in a policy-driven world. I believe that most of those incidents actually originate by coming through personnel anyway, so personnel directs where they go. So if we don't have a need to know those, then we have a need to know those.
And they are few and far between, and we have also used the sheriff's office in cases where we've had to have investigations done. So that is confidential anyway.
Now, in any event, I think this potentially sets a dangerous precedent. And I say that in the fact that this is not even a department head that has made this request. Director of Public Safety has not requested this, at least to my knowledge, at least when I've been in the room. Despite a previous meeting in September and the previous joint Public Safety Finance Committee. And this
Oh, sorry, Dan. You got it, Jeff.
this went about with the deputy director effectively not coming to the department head and interfering in the potentially internal structure and operations of another department.
I have to correct you on that. That is not accurate. So I don't think it's fair to even say that to the supervisors or the public.
I think it's
Regarding the
accurate because as we previously discussed, there was no discussion with me at any point prior to September
This
17th.
discussion started about 3 or 4 years ago, so it's not something that's new on the table. And it has come up recently because of budgetary concerns and trying to use the resources we have instead of hiring new positions, putting new positions on the payroll. So in an effort to be efficient and to use the resources, it's something that we feel is necessary and actually will benefit the county and the employees.
I will simply say, I guess, sometimes what's remembered is not what was done. So I'll leave it at that.
Supervisor?
Well, I guess I'll share my ignorance with everybody. The title of safety officer to me does not demonstrate an additional duty of sexual harassment investigations. I clearly must be, in the dark about what the duties and scope of the safety officer is. I did not know that. And these kind of details would have been important, I guess, perhaps in the conversation. But it sounds like, and it happens, I've been there, over time, you assign additional duties to a titled person that may or may not be directly reflective of their title. I have them right now, in fact, in my current, one of my jobs. But I guess the point is, that would have been helpful to know. And more importantly, if that's no longer the case, right? So let's say this continues through, where do those assigned duties, other assigned duties go? If it's gonna create a conflict. And I don't know, and I'm making a comment, not necessarily anything else, but as I was driving down here, in my hour and a half on the road, what do? Think about things, right? So at the federal level, and we talk about the crunch on budget, I'm just gonna put this on the table now since it's a great segue. You know, a lot of times, they reduce positions. The duties, responsibilities, everything don't change, but you reduce positions, and you can only work within how many people you have. So that is also an option on the table, quite candidly to everybody here, is to think, well, we can't resource all these positions. We have to resource them at the right level, though. We talked about attracting the talent, retaining the talent, that kind of thing. So if you try to adjust the rheostat that way, you could have a problem. But you may say, I can't allow 4, I can only allow 3. It's all we can afford is 3. And you work and do the amount of work you can achieve with 3. And that gets adjusted. Administration to administration down in DC quite often. So just something to think about. But back to this conversation, I did not realize that you got additional scope in that title. So that would have been helpful in that conversation.
Just wanted to say that they've done the workplace violence and sexual harassment stuff for years. They go to our fire departments. I've actually attended, before it was online, you had to attend one. So I've actually attended them with our fire department, our town council members. So it's not new to a lot of us just because we actually attended them. Now a lot of it can be done online, but they actually do the base work to make sure it's available online. And they can come out if you think you've got a problem, you can bring them out to your, whichever group it is, entity of the towns, or the county, villages, whatever. So they've interacted, and I don't see that changing or going away. I think that will still stay with them. It's just in investigative purposes, maybe somebody has to step back, somebody else has to do it. I think that's the way I see it.
It's usually just the preliminary part that the safety officers, like if someone actually complains, that first comes in, usually to the safety officer or the personnel office. And that preliminary part is done by the safety officers. If it becomes where it's warranted, the cases that I've seen, which again are few and far between, have gone to the sheriff's office where they've gotten involved in the investigation. And I think I've only seen that once or twice. It's not always sexual harassment. Sometimes it's harassment, right? Or one person's bothering another.
Right. I'm just sharing with you, the title safety officer is not necessarily an umbrella everywhere, that which you just described, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the more I'm listening here, the more confused I'm getting, and I've got a lot of questions now, where I only had one before. We have a safety officer, we have an officer, and we have a deputy safety officer, right? Now, if you transfer the deputy safety officer to Tim, is that what we're talking about
No.
or not talking about?
Oh,
Senior
Pardon me?
safety officer and safety officer.
Both.
Yes.
Both are going down there.
They aren't going anywhere. They're gonna stay right in their office. It's just the umbrella that supervises them, like they did
That's what he's
with.
talking about.
Well, they did
That's
with-
what I understand that.
Okay, well,
No
that's
confusion.
not the way I think.
So with that being said, tell me, where is there any money being saved? Melissa, you said that due to budgetary constraints, this is cost effective. Where's there any money being saved?
It initially came up again, like I said, it came up a few years ago, it came up again during the budget process. When the deputy director came to me and mentioned the fact that they could use a position that they used to have down there. Which, I'm sorry, I can't remember the title.
Emergency management coordinator.
Emergency management coordinator. But, you know, there is this resource that's available with the safety officers, and this isn't something that hasn't happened before. We had a senior safety officer who was out of work for several months, a year or two ago. And during that time, we had public safety work as their resource, so they worked together. So public safety and the person that was still here, I think, in the safety officer, they worked together. So this has been done before, and we saw how well it worked as a resource. The public safety department can also help them with their training. So if we do have a case where we have safety officers out, or one, it may retire in a couple of years, we have that resource available. Or right now, if we were to have a vacancy with our senior safety officer, we have a new safety officer who is left he's kind of on his own. So this would just help the efficiency of those two departments working together on a day-to-day basis. It's not that they don't work together now. After talking to both departments, I think that there would be an efficiency there that would help both of them. And I'm listening to both of them, and they both feel that this is a good move. So I didn't want to ignore that without that coming to you as a possibility.
So there is no savings. I mean, for the budget, you're not saving money in the budget.
You just
Not
don't
now.
add that person for public safety.
Oh, you mean hire, otherwise you're gonna hire somebody.
That would be their ask,
Could be
yes.
looked at.
Just
yes.
one clarification, it's not a separate safety department, safety officer is part of my.
Yes, and I know that. So that was a little, and now, am I clear in hearing, Dan, what you're saying? That you advise us to be very cautious about doing this, and maybe it's not the right move? Is that what your advice is?
That's my
From
advice.
legal counsel? Okay. Got it.
I just want to point out, the safety officer has been in 2 or 3 different departments since I've been here. But more importantly, as more and more workplace violence, sexual harassment training has gone on, those duties have been put in under the safety officer because he was out there doing training to everyone. And we're good at it, so that's sort of matured. And the real title really should be risk management, because that's more what they're doing than safety officer. And, you know, as I said before, that we went to talk to risk management or presentation put up by NEMR. They asked, someone asked about risk management, and they said, "Do you have safety officers?" And we said, "Yes." And said, "Well, we have risk management because that's their job. That's what they're designed to do, you know." some other places, education may fall in different departments. But here we put it under the safety officer.
So,
A couple of things. First, I'm curious as how the union would handle the move, because Dan, we're talking about client confidentiality, and Dave talked about risk management. The minute that you don't have that client confidentiality, you put the county at risk. That piece there, I'm still not quite, I haven't quite figured out what the pros and cons to the move are. Because seemingly it works now because the county attorney has to stay objective. With a person that comes in with a sexual harassment case, he can't tell everybody and neither can Tim or Glenn, I'm not saying that. But there's a piece there of his job, and he has taken a note for client confidentiality. That's not across the board.
I would just take a second to put my spin on this. Okay, first of all, Dan was very clear that the safety is under him. So I don't know outside of the legal aspects that we put our safety officer under somebody who doesn't understand safety, who probably has any trouble with safety. We're just talking about them handling claims for sexual harassment. So let's take another department that I'm very familiar with. You have the same amount of security that needs to be maintained in the veterans office down there with the people that they work with. They're not assigned under the attorney. You have the same thing over the Department of Social Services. They're not assigned under the attorney. There's only one issue here that the attorney shouldn't be involved with, and that's the sexual harassment aspect of it when it's reported. And I said, you know, so to leave it where it is for that one reason doesn't seem like it makes any sense to me. When right now, the way it works, it still works fine. It's not, there's no breach of security. There's no, you know, I just don't, I'm having trouble understanding that logic. For one item, we're gonna take and leave a department to make decisions over the day-to-day operations of safety when they have no training in all of it. And if all we're gonna do is look at safety because of the financial gain or loss, then we're looking at safety in a whole different area because it's about people's safety. It's not about the money aspect of it, to protect them.
Sam, what about unions? Is there anything in the union contracts that say?
They're not union,
No, but they're going to a union.
but they're not, no, they wouldn't fit under the officer.
I guess if I can respond briefly, workplace safety, in my view, is part of corporate compliance. And corporate compliance, my responsibility.
But you're involved in all legal matters, whether it is DSS or any department that has legal issues or questions, would still use you as a reference. That wouldn't change.
I mean, public safety, you just said it, Ian, you know, it's in everything. Public safety, they don't report to you. They're not under your department. That's the whole public. Yeah, so
I think the only thing, we brought this up, so the working relationship between the safety officer at the time and public safety actually came to, or developed under the former county attorney. The whole thing when Bill went out, right, this process came about then through giant discussions with Roger and this, the way that we work now is in concert with each other of if Bill's not available or one of the safety officers aren't available. And there's an incident, not a sexual harassment typically, but another workplace type incident, right? One of us will go and collect the initial and report to Melissa or Dan or Danielle, depending on what it is. We saw this as an opportunity to say, how do we carry forward the safety program you have in Washington County? I can tell you firsthand because I visited other counties, I've attended the ESSA conferences, is top notch, right? Right now, in order to want to carry that forward for the next 10 years, we need to look big picture and say, how do we do that? Because Bill is our safety program and has done an excellent job. Luckily, I've gotten to work alongside him a long time, as have most of you. I've collected a lot of things that Phil has taught me over the years, and I hope, and Brad is starting to now, say, how do we keep that going forever? In addition to, rather than us asking for another person, Phil and Brad have a lot of the background things that can benefit us when we need them most, which isn't every day all the time, but it saves on a lot of that training. If we can co-train 4 people to do the basics of what we need to do at the beginning of an incident or the beginning of an onset of something in the public that we need to do. We looked at this as an opportunity to say, before asking for a person, and we try this for a year. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I understand Dan's concerns completely. I mean, we deal with lots of confidential stuff. We go to Dan direct. We're not saying that we need to know everything. 100%, you know, however this thing works out. It was a suggestion, I guarantee you, we went to the county administrator at budget time. That's when the discussion came up.
No further discussion. Okay, so we have a motion, we got a second. All in favor, say aye. Yes, you can, Nancy.
I just want to know what the motion is.
The motion is to, it's a statement, it's the
Change staff.
staffing pattern change. Move it from, remove the senior safety officer and safety officer from county attorney and add to the public safety staffing pattern. That's the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Carried.
How many are on this committee
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
on personnel?
Yep. So we did that before.
I mean, we got everybody here, right?
Yep. So,
Yeah, I know, that's why it gets confusing.
Does this go to full board?
Yes.
yes,
That's where you can weigh in, John.
Now, what is that? Send
John
that-
can always.
Do we change that in here in-house or does it go forward?
It
Goes to the board.
this is full board next Friday. Okay, other business, we're at.
So in your packets are just the most current employment opportunities with the county and the current civil service exams that we have. Just informational. The next item on the agenda is to talk about exit interviews. So it was suggested that I bring back some information about our exit interviews that we received with the county. I have some data last year between resignations, terminations, and retirements. There were a total of 90. And as of September 30th of this year, there was a total of 79. So it looks like we're trending a little bit higher than last year for that. Based on that data too, there were more resignations so far compared to last year. And that was the higher number of the three. So some general overall reasons for leaving the county per the exit interviews that we received. We only received 21 so far this year. Not every department does hand in exit interviews. But overall, the work was not as expected and they did not feel that this position was for them, was multiple. Some were offered other positions with more flexibility, closer to home and more pay. And others were referred to state jobs by having more paid time off, same health insurance for less. So like that was kind of the consensus of most of those exit interviews that came in. I don't know if anybody has
Questions, John?
Were these personal or were these done on paper?
They're done on paper by the department usually.
They're handed out and the employee fills them, hands it back in and that's sealed.
Yeah, usually that someone sits with them and kind of goes over it with them as well. And then the department head signs off on them.
Do you have any frequency where they bypass the department head and come to you?
Since I've been in the position, I've only had one person come to me for an exit interview. But they can come to me and I pass the department.
Any other questions? Regarding that?
Work wasn't what they expected. Meaning that perhaps the posting wasn't as complete as it should have been, or that we all know that some departments, there's some pretty high stressful situation.
I think that was more of what they were pertaining to, yeah.
Okay.
If they knew what, it seemed like they knew the position, but once they got in, they didn't realize how much came with that.
We've seen that in multiple departments, depending on, okay.
Yeah. Isn't it great? We've seen in like caseworkers and also I think the 911 communicators, those positions as well, is where I've seen it mostly. Yeah, yeah.
It's not easy work. But now you're back to compensation, right?
Right.
But I think sometimes people don't always read the job requirement. Remember when we were advertising for a position as a professional engineer? And the gym teacher ran it. She had a gym.
We see that a lot when people are applying.
They don't.
They don't meet the qualifications a lot of the time.
Supposed to be professional engineer, not.
Well, if Indeed is referring them to it, yeah. Dispatch.
The emotional impact of the assessment, public safety, which I really don't consider.
Right. And like I stated, like more seasoned people know where the newer people coming in, I think it's been more of that. Where it's, they don't really know, they're new to the job market as a whole, and to be into that position, I think it's just kind of a lot, you know.
Hey, are there any other questions?
I have
John?
a question
Yes, sir.
on, employment opportunities. Election inspectors don't have to get paid minimum wages.
I refer that to the treasurer.
I didn't hear the question.
The inspection,
Election and.
election inspectors don't need to get paid minimum wage.
Governments are exempt from the law, but we've tried to maintain that level regardless of our legal requirement.
Governments are,
Exempt from minimum wage.
The government does.
Their own laws.
Yeah.
So we can pay somebody.
You can
so
say
you're
less.
saying my town is exempt from paying minimum wage?
Do as I say, not as I do. So
You had to be here when they changed the rules on, emissions for trucks and we all went out and bought them before the rule changed.
Yeah, well, there's an emission, the ones with batteries in them.
So lastly, if you have any other questions on those. Lastly, for personnel was just, we're having retirement recognition at the October board meeting. There's quite a few longtime employees that will be recognized at the board meeting.
Does anyone else have anything for the personnel? If not, then we'll turn it over to the finance chair.
Well, I think the staffing requests probably go right through your work department, so.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep, you got it, so we'll start with those. So these were sent out, the 2025 staffing requests. Did everybody have an opportunity to review those? Look at them? Does anyone have any questions on it? Yes.
If we approve all of them, what does that do? What's the increase to the county budget if we approve all?
Nearly half of them.
Nearly, just on this staffing pattern.
Well, I'm just looking at the bottom line.
430.
436.
Yeah. All right, 6,000 roughly.
Do any of these staffing pattern changes reduce cost?
Do any of the proposed?
Yeah, the proposed.
Yes, the sewer district, has a reduction overall with their changes.
That's the only one.
Yeah.
Ask you a question.
So the ones where there's class changes or grade changes. Most of those you looked over and you feel that definitely should be working in the upper grade.
Not
Working this and that,
necessarily. Not
Right.
necessarily.
so that's kind of a question I would like to know, because if have somebody that should be getting better, we should know. Versus the ones that we like, and if we have to cut.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we met, quite a few times, Danielle and myself, and looked at the job classifications and the title by grade schedule and where everyone was. So we were able to come up with a recommendation list that we have that we'll share with you if you're interested. That cuts it down significantly, down to about $136,000 from the $437,000. Those are our
Oh, I didn't-
recommendations
but
based
I would like
on.
to see that.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
I would like to see that because, yeah, I'm not saying that, you know, people don't deserve the other ones, but there's definitely people. who
We went green.
deserve it.
You really went green.
I'm saying it.
Green means go, right?
Trying to say something?
Anyway, handing that out, let me ask a question to Melissa. And, you know, let's say we take up your recommendation. And we're not, the action we're taking is still, we're increasing the budget by 130 sometimes.
34, 330.
And how about morale? Are we hurting county morale by taking your advice? Would we have better morale if we denied everybody?
That's a good question.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just, this is a lot of, we need some discussion here on this because it's a major vote.
On the sheet that was just passed out, I don't mean to step on Danielle, but you want to interject?
Yep.
Buildings and grounds would be the first requests that are on your sheet, and those are as a result of a SWIMS grant that Matt has applied for and is most likely getting. So most of those requests are covered by that grant.
For 1 year.
For 1 year, that's correct, right, so the following years, there'll be an increase to the budget, correct?
But that was to stay competitive with the state. The state did raise all of their lifeguards, so we do need it. I feel we need it to be competitive with the state.
And that's a reason that's kind of unique to these positions, because usually we can't stay competitive with the state rates. But I think we've all seen even at the town level that the lifeguards are hard to come by. So paying them an increased rate of pay, I think will maybe help with filling those positions for that short season that they're actually employed. Trying to get back to your question about the morale. I think as Supervisor Feather pointed out, we're not trying to say that the requests that were brought forth were not warranted. There have been some requests to adjust salaries. I, for one, have kind of made my opinion known. I believe that we do have some salary adjustments that should be looked at. I just think that this is not the year that Washington County can afford to do that. I think that across the board, I more than think, I know, across the board, our positions are on the lower pay schedule compared to surrounding counties. We go to associations and even our higher positions are the least paid in the state. So I think that's a across the board problem. I also think that we do need to give some attention to the salaries and wages that employees are paid. I just feel that we can't do that this year. So maybe it's something we can do next year. I think it becomes more of a morale problem when you start to just pick out a couple at this point in time and raise those up and not look at the whole schedule. Because we had many requests this year from department heads to increase their employees' wages as well as their own. So there is a concern across the board, and I think it's something we do need to look at. I just don't think we can afford, after all the conversations with the treasurer and the budget officer, we just can't afford to do that this year.
I noticed if you took the sewer district and we immediately approved that, because there's a savings, I mean, there's no need to really even discuss it. That drives the cost of your recommendations up to over 160,000.
Unless the grant comes in for the swim program, right?
But even if it does,
It'd be 120.
it increases next year's budget. We kick the can down the road.
I agree.
Charles.
Although it's not likely to talk about this year, do we think it could be any better next year?
Not at all. I don't
Right,
have any
right.
optimism in next.
From a morale point of view, they're not unaware of that situation either.
So I would go where Daryl went. I think it comes to a point where we have to decide if we're gonna pay more people, do we have less people? It's the same way I look at carpool. I don't mind the carpool, it's a good thing, but if I had 40 less cars, I wouldn't have to pay maintenance on those 40 cars, and I'd have more money to pay for the cars. So I think we need to look at every aspect going forward, because I don't think we realize what the Great Meadow effect is gonna be across our region. So I think there's a lot of things in play here that we're gonna have to look at every department, everything that we touch. And we're late in the year to do that right now, but I think at the beginning of the year, we better start right off, because it could be a very bad year. I'm glad you brought that up. The state is now taking DMV money daily instead of monthly. OFA, they cut off for about 4 months in revenue. They didn't get any. They can now put in again. We got a letter yesterday, same with public health with Medicaid. They're gonna cut us off till December. I think they're hemorrhaging cash, and this is their way of withholding it from getting out to us. So I think you're on point. That's what I see.
And we don't wanna take, we don't wanna make our employees feel like they're failing if they're not getting the inbox emptied out, and all that kind of stuff. We gotta manage that expectation, rather provide more to the employees that we have. And we understand that, the work's gonna keep coming at them. No matter how many hours they put in, we all know that, right? It's kind of endless, the work that they do. We just have to manage that.
Well, and even though we're mandated, we can slow it down and how fast it goes. If you have less people, it will slow down. And sometimes just slowing down the money lead is a hell of a benefit.
Right.
You still need to do the services, but you might have to slow down.
I've also been in the office where I've looked to my left and the right and the chairs aren't filled and all the work that they expect to get done just the same. And you're working 14, 15-hour days, and that we have to manage the expectation that we're not gonna require that of our employees. They have a full day, they get the work done. If they want some overtime, well, there's plenty of that. If you want it, here it is, but it's not expected. Does it,
Yep.
That's what I'm trying to get at is, if we make that decision to control our expenses and we use that lever, we also have to manage how it's done. Otherwise, you're not gonna retain good people.
No, and what you're saying is really true, because if we can manage less meetings and we're actually doing the work, would help in some of the parts too. You don't need to be meeting to death, don't get the work done. I think, and that will help morale.
Just a little bit of a mindset change.
So, as I understand it, Daryl, you're advocating the pay raises without more personnel,
Correct.
because they need something. I mean, you can't be both understaffed and not paid as well as.
That's correct.
I mean, that's what we have to wrestle with. There is no definitive correct answer here. There's risk associated either way we go.
Yeah.
Judge, you'd like to ask something?
I'm a little confused. We're approaching this from management, and I totally understand it. I don't disagree with the word anybody said. But what, we do all this, how are we paying for it? I mean, what's the plan there? I'm looking to you, Brian, only because you're the budget officer, and I know that
Well,
you gotta advise us
I
here.
thought before last meeting, there would probably be cuts that people wanted to make at this table. Instead, I got word that they just wanted to override the cap and spend more.
And what are we talking, 10, 15%?
Yeah, I'm in hopes of bringing you a budget at the cap, but there will be $5 million of fund balance usage in that. So
Okay,
if
that's
you
our
want-
option.
So if you want to go over the cap, you would have to vote, and we're gonna get to that discussion in a little bit, but you'd have to get to that point by what you're comfortable with and what's your 5 or 10-year plan in doing it, because you can override it once and go big and then, calm back down. Or the whole idea when the cap came was the board that was here. And you gotta remember, that's the thing, boards change. And I've seen it upheave what a lot of intentions were when the board started something that changes. So when the cap started, we all agreed you'd have to go to the cap because the cap was gonna be somewhere between 2 and 3% normally. And believe it or not, we had one year where it was 0.75% because inflation was so low. Hard to imagine that today. But we didn't even stick by that, and we actually went 0, which was actually a decrease because we didn't even get growth that year. So.
That's not the point I'm making.
No, so what I'm saying is going forward, if we decided our new number is gonna be 4 or 5%, well, that works fine until the board changes and somebody says, no, I want a 0. So that's why we're gonna have a whole discussion about different opportunities and where you wanna go. But right today, I'm looking at, the regular 2% cap and $5 million in fund balance. It looks like the best I can get with what we're gonna add.
Does that include all the recommendations there?
I think that's the best I can get.
So that doesn't.
Well, not all the recommendations, just the green sheet.
Right, well, that's the recommendation for this sheet. Okay, well, I mean, because the outcome is what we need to know with the decisions that we're trying to make. And that has to be out there.
And so,
5 million, now, how
and the
does
way I'm looking at it,
Al feel about that? Can we live with that?
You already know how I feel about it.
Well, no,
Could
this
you
is
reiterate
us
that?
to make a decision, Al. This is the time to hear from everybody. I mean, we've got the departments, we got the employees, we're hearing recommendations, advice. Now the financial advice comes out. That's Brian and that's you. Do you advise us to go with the 5 million this year?
So-
Thinking it's gonna get better, or if it's gonna get worse? And if it's gonna get worse, we're setting ourselves for a 20 or 30% taxing. And people need to be aware of that, is all. And so we need that information out here too.
And I think that you'll have an extensive discussion in the very near future before this meeting adjourns. But the short answer I'll give you is the one I give you every year. That level of fund balance is not sustainable. And I don't see, to the new supervisor's point, I don't see relief next year. None of the things that hit us this year are going away. Health insurance costs are not going down. You're gonna hear a resolution in a little bit with a 30-some-odd% increase in our retirees' health insurance. This stuff is not getting better tomorrow. It's not. So if you have to do 5 million this year and hit me again for 5 million next year, we're gonna have a very different conversation that is not sustainable. So before this meeting is adjourned, we will have a very intensive discussion on what your options are.
and you brought up a good point. That is only 1 year that we could possibly do this. Because we actually think we'll save money this year, hopefully at least half of that 5 million, maybe all of it, doubtful, but maybe. But the big change we're gonna see is what is sales tax actually when we get into next year. That's uncharted territory with losing the amount of families and workers that we're gonna lose here in weeks.
And the last thing that I'll say at this point is sometimes there's a difference between what you deserve and what you can afford. We all make these decisions in our personal life. I might think I deserve a G-Wagon, but I drive a 2016 Tundra with 200,000 miles on it. There's a difference between what you deserve and what you can afford. And you all are tasked with making that decision very soon.
Just for information, throughout the whole year, what is our average fund balance? High, low, and average
So
across.
we have finally got to a point, Supervisor, where we've built back to what we should have. So our recommendation is 2 months of operating. So we should have around 22 million of fund balance. We finally got back there. So this one hit would drop us below our low level watermark. And 2 years in a row would be a very devastating conversation that, and again, and we'll have this, like I said, we'll have this very intense discussion later. I think if any of you talk to your residents, they will tell you, give me 3 3s, don't give me a 9. If you've got to increase the cost, please give it to me in stages. You know, how do you eat a bear? One bite at a time. But you also have to put in the work. Don't go to a taxpayer with a 10% increase when we haven't made attempt at any cuts at all. You have to find that sweet spot where you've tried everything you can do. And through unfunded mandates and health insurance changes, things you can't control, those conversations are easier to have with your taxpayers. The narrative has to be informative for them to make sure that you have done the job you are hired to do for them, if that makes any sense.
I just want to make sure I understand the staffing requests in blue were all the ones made, and the ones in green are the ones you're recommending.
Yes. And if you have any questions about the ones we recommended or anything that we didn't recommend, if you wanna.
I do have a question.
Sure.
One in the blue, and Board of Elections, it says, add 2 Board of Elections clerks at 40 hours. Pending change in law, what's that?
Legislative.
If the governor signs that bill.
It's already been
law,
passed by legislature.
It may not be our choice.
The governor just needs.
Right, that would be another.
The bill is to mandate each elections department in the state to add 2 employees. Whether you need it or justify it or not, to add 2 employees to that.
Mr. O.
Now, you just mentioned something about if we ask our residents, they prefer 2 3 over and out. But before we get to that point, we should make.
My personal opinion, yes.
Do you feel we've done that this year, the last 2 years? Have we created, been as efficient and expense oriented as we could have been?
Without the board feeling disrespected, I don't think we've made,
Disrespect them.
I don't-
Disrespect the board.
I don't think we've made any attempt at cuts.
Okay.
What I saw last week was, surprising to me.
Okay, that's what I need to hear. Thank you.
Just to get back quickly to the sewer district where has a negative impact or a positive impact, actually, like, saving 26,000. That's the sewer district, so that has nothing to do.
It doesn't
with
save
our-
us, it's
it
set in
doesn't.
the
So
general
could-
fund budget.
Can we move that, resolution to approve the sewer district request, get it off the table?
We certainly can.
So I make that motion.
Second. Mr. Fisher. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So with that being said, now that bottom total automatically goes to $160,000.
Well,
Yes, sir.
basically, yeah.
Yes,
Because
and
it was,
it always was there.
it was always 160,000.
Right.
Yes.
So I mean, that's false information, false to. Very good.
Yes.
So I read the room right, there's gonna have to be more personnel and dollar increases. There's gonna be more payroll increases over the year, because we're continuing to kick a can down the road. So somewhere, unless we just wanna keep kicking the can down the road, somewhere, say next year, if you come in and wanna make a massive adjustment again, how, you have to think about this year, how much of this do you wanna do? Much of the blue, do you wanna think about adding to the green sheet
And I think
so that it's
that,
not as high next year?
that's what the
Also, that
green
counts.
sheet is.
No, I get that, but this is what we feel the people are being paid, that should be paid more, it's the green one. But
Well, no, with that, what we're saying is. The
Well, that's what I
green-
asked
The
for.
green sheet is like anomalies. And the rest of them, we can all fix it.
They're more duty related.
Yes.
right, that's what I asked for, so that's what the green
Yes,
sheet
ma'am.
is. But if in the previous statement was said that we need to also fix other wages over the year,
Which is globally, everybody.
correct?
That's what.
So if you're looking at a big jump on that next year, is there some of this stuff on the blue sheet that could be added to the green sheet to help lessen some of that blow next year? Or you just wanna go, nope, kick all that down the road and forget about it? I think that also has to be decided. Because you already said it's gonna be a big increase down the road, and then next year's not gonna be any better, so where are you gonna do that increase?
And in order to retain staff, that's where I think eventually we're gonna have to make adjustments. I know we did one 3 years ago. I don't think we're gonna be able to afford to do one massive adjustment, or massive, but adjustment like we did 3 years ago. We might have to do it in stages. Maybe we do, a third 1 year, a third another, and give a little bit more each year. But I don't think, to answer your question, that if we take out 2 or 3 requests from your blue sheet, your whole, I don't think that's gonna fix the problem. I think it may actually cause more issues.
So you wanna just leave all this, so to speak, on the table and then think of looking forward to make a big change in next year and one in 26 and one in
Make
27.
some kind of adjustment next year.
Okay, I
If
just wanna
we can
make sure
afford
that
to
as you're
do
thinking
so.
about throwing that down the road, I don't wanna be sitting here next year again and say, well, we can't do anything again, and now all you've done is made the gap bigger
Right.
and the tax increase
Well,
bigger.
you bring up a good point, but remember the way we did it the last time is kind of the way we'll have to do it again, because it goes by unions. And we usually match our non-union with union. Well, you have to do it, because if you do it outside of the union, then you're setting yourself up for costs you can't afford. So
Well, no, I get that.
So
I'm
that's
just-
kind of where,
You're
this
talking
part here
future.
doesn't affect that. And I think that's where we were trying to get, is that as we enter negotiations and where we go, that's how.
I have Darren on. Sue's done.
Well, it's more of a comment dovetailing into what Cassie mentioned is, I think we're gonna have to pull another lever on that balance, to Al's point, and it may be the expectation in each department. Again, union, non-union, we have to look at that too. Each department comes in with a recommendation of, okay, which position could you eliminate? And then we'll increase the wages and benefits of those that remain. We have breakage in the staffing pattern now, so some departments, it may be kind of an easy thing, right? Offer up stuff that's not filled. But we, again, have to go back and level the expectation of what we expect in terms of what could be accomplished in a year, right? And it is a hard thing to do, because I've done it. It's a very hard thing to do. And it's gonna require some work.
And it's even tougher with so.
A couple of things, take for instance, the IT, okay? The IT, when it came forward, we had discussion about being able to help towns, okay? The towns, every single one of us around this table are looking at budgets for our towns, probably exceeding $30,000 a year. Okay, if the county were to be able to put in this position and the town actually pay back some revenue to help the IT needs that towns are facing, would that be an acceptable use? That's number one. Okay, so value for service and actually having a shared service for the towns, because I don't know about anybody else, but I know our IT in our town has gone very, very long. We're still not there yet. And we, I put in between water and just general cybersecurity type of IT, we're up to probably $50,000. You know, if you could use some of that money and send it back to the county, what would that look like? That's number one. Code. Code's not in the green. Where are we at with revenue? Do we have fire inspections done? Are they getting done? Have their revenues gone down because they don't have the people that they need in order to do the service that they've been put into place for? I don't know what the answer is to that. But maybe we should look at it.
For all the reasons that have been brought up, including what the treasurer stated, there's no question we have to look at efficiencies. We have to take a hard look at it. I'm not sure we have the time to do it in a responsible way at this stage for this budget. But we can't wait till next budget year starts to
Right.
do it. We need to start in January.
I appreciate that, because for somewhere in the last couple of years, it's gotten to the point where we're kind of like just going with the flow instead of putting the brakes on and looking for those efficiencies, and we need to get back to that rather quickly. And it would be best if we do look and each department has different issues and things that
thanks for that. It's just family changes. In return, everyone back to the treasurer.
This is a good conversation, however, we have to keep in mind what we don't have control of. We saw DSS, what the net cost is going up $2 million this year. That's because other mandates coming down. Health insurance, we have very little cost and very little control about that. On where it goes up. How can we change healthcare? We're self-insured. We set the plans itself for the health of our healthcare providers. But the real issue is that when you take that net out there, the amount we have control over reduces and reduces and reduces. And I'd love to cut to make it more efficient. And take it in mind, we have to remember, there's so much in this budget, we don't have any control over. Period. End of story. How can we not deliver services? Maybe you could change the way we approach delivering services. But we're still gonna provide some of those services because they're mandated.
Charlie? You agree? Oh, Jeff.
I don't know, throughout the year, it's been mentioned several times. The staffing patterns have changed, we've added new people, raised them. And we just sat here and agreed. It has been up several times throughout the year. And that's one thing I believe we gotta put our foot down and stop doing.
It should only be a budget time. We tried to establish that, but.
You mentioned it back 3-4 months ago. And that's a big cost right there.
One thing though I noticed is the grants are now providing money for staffing, where in the past they haven't. So a lot of that is happening too,
driving
which
some
is
of that.
different, yeah.
And then the concern is always, okay, that's great. Well, we
Right,
have the grant,
right,
then the grant goes away.
Right, exactly.
Al,
I just wanted to answer Supervisor Cleary's, question. Code enforcement's revenue is up 7,000, so I would assume they're getting the work done.
Okay. Thank you.
I can't speak for them, but the revenue reflects.
Okay, that was the question. Thank you.
And they want to increase fees.
So
yeah.
Yes, sir.
the revenue certainly doesn't pay for going for.
No, sir.
I think the number I got is the revenue we get in for code enforcement covers about 25% of our costs.
About right.
And at the same time, we don't want to slow down any economic growth of any kind too. John, you agree?
Yeah, and on Sue's point about IT. My town went the whole big time last year for IT. We hired a separate place, all this. Now, if IT is gonna start with the village, we won't need them. You won't need them. Who's gonna use that at my taxpayers' expense?
Right, no, so that would be revenue from each individual town that wants to use them would be number one. But at that point, you might find that you need to switch because it may be cheaper. But we tried this right during the middle of COVID when everybody had a laptop. And there was a complaint by the board and that was all about cybersecurity. Oh, we can't give laptops to every supervisor, but the whole idea was to prevent the cost of a cybersecurity breach. There, well, now we're finding out, I believe they passed legislation, to my knowledge, I haven't seen it, that we all have to have .gov domains for all our town stuff. I have not seen the legislation, I have been informed of it. So there's a big expense because you'll have to be on basically what the county is on for your webmail. So there's a lot of those things coming down the line, and cybersecurity insurance is probably up 4 times from what it was 10 years ago. And so all those things in consideration, there probably will be a way that if all the towns were actually paying revenue, we'd probably all be paying cheaper than what we do individually, and it would also offset some of our costs at, IT.
I just like to comment, and I don't know how it's set up over there, but the income from, the revenues from voting. I don't know if, with every application, they have to accept a check. So I don't know when they deposit that check. So they could have deposited that check and those applications are still sitting there to be worked on. So the revenue coming in doesn't necessarily indicate that the work is actually being performed. And I think in fairness to them, when we talk about is the work being, and I don't mean that negatively, it's not a negative hit on them. It just may not correlate to the money comes in, but they still got those applications to do. I don't know if they hold it and they don't deposit the check until they start, or how that operates. That just me not understanding it. But they may be paying the fee and the work still may not be being done.
Back to the recommended list that Danielle and I put together. It doesn't mean that just because we didn't include the code enforcement positions or the IT positions, it doesn't mean that we don't think that those positions are worthy of an increase, or that we don't think that they really deserve or should have an increase. It just means that we're trying to be efficient and save costs this year. And we also look at it from a bigger picture. We look at the entire county as far as employees go in positions, and it's really across the board that people may need a 2-grade increase. So if we just pick certain departments and do that, it kind of throws things out of whack. There's also not code enforcement, but IT has union positions as well. So if you raise 2 positions in that are non-union, it offsets, well, compresses, cause issues maybe with some that are union. So that's why we look at the bigger picture, I guess. And that's how we came up with the list we came up with.
Some of the department heads also that had union positions were stating the same too. You
Yes.
know, they're,
And we kind of told them you gotta wait.
Yeah,
No,
of
that-
course,
You
for
belong to the union
negotiations.
and that's the negotiation next. Charlie? You have something again?
You must have a twist.
Charlie, stop reading, please.
I thought I saw Rachel's hand. Maybe
Maybe
it's
we're not
ready.
an option.
I don't
They
know.
could be buying everything.
Looking at my computer. Charlie.
Oh, maybe it was just Dan and I just got the wrong one.
No, I had raised my hand the other day. This question is for Al, and you probably can't answer it, but maybe you can get it. If for every 1% that we go over the tax cap, because we gotta go to the tax cap, we know that. What is the increase to a $200,000 home?
So
That discussion's coming.
So hang tight, because that will be answered soon, because it's not, as those of you who've been here for a while understand, it's not that easy an answer, because there's what we levy and then what the rate becomes. And as some of you have seen before, you can have a tax increase and a reduced rate, right? So we're gonna have that conversation in a little bit, so you might go to the tax cap at 2.54% and actually see a tax decrease to your system. And that's sometimes it's hard for people to comprehend.
Not to all of them.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
If the county, we're gonna have that conversation very soon, so just
Yes.
put a post-it note on that, hold tight.
And keep in mind that the county assessed value, once it's equalized, is up 9.5%. So it skews, it's a hard year to look at it when that's big. So that skews everything.
And that's coming soon to a theater near you, so.
And that's why we have our real property person here to help explain anything that we have misconceptions.
You're gonna be here for quite a while.
Yeah,
That's fine.
we might have to order
I'm
one.
actually thinking about going and.
You probably have tons of.
Yes, back to the green sheet. Back to the green sheet. Is there something on the blue sheet that you wish was on the green sheet that you didn't want to do? Are you happy with the green sheet? Or do you want to move by department? How do you want to go forward?
Single green sheet.
I figure in my mind, you either have to go all in or all out on the green sheet. Because that's the way we've been approaching this. And so I'll make a motion, we go all out. Don't give any make any changes. That's my motion. And if that fails, we got that off the board and go the other way.
Is there a second for that?
The motion is, so you.
That we do no
Nobody
changes.
gets anything. You don't do
This
green,
your
green sheet
morale
or
clause,
blue.
your employee morale.
Well, I think it's gonna improve morale by not doing it.
But you've already approved the sewer district.
Right, that's why I wanted that off, because it has no impact on anything.
So,
A discussion on this, if the grants come in, you don't put the grants in until after the season. Right, so the
Right.
grant positions that are on the green sheet add up to about $64,000. That money will come back in once we receive those grants, right?
Yeah,
No,
that's
there's another
the
one down
the
on the
youth
bottom.
position and the swim grant.
25 on the bottom.
The youth intern is
That's right.
out as a grant.
Yeah, that'll be it.
And the youth one, they said they would only do the youth intern if the grant was
If they
received.
actually get it.
So that would be a 0.
Dan's point, I make a motion to accept the green sheet as the recommended adjustments to staffing.
I second that.
Second by Mr. Fisher. Any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Finance or personnel, it's fine.
Both.
Finance at this point. You can go on. Carry it.
Wait,
Anybody,
you didn't
anybody
answer the
opposed? That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
Anybody
I
opposed?
oppose it.
I oppose.
We got 2 no's, John. Okay. Now we're into. That was about
That was
staffing.
the one.
So we can now adjourn to personnel, have a motion. Harold? Jim second, all in favor?
Aye. Okay,
Vote. Carry. Adjourn. Personnel.
so now we're back in finance. I need a motion to accept the minutes for September 12th.
Yeah,
By John, second by.
Yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Dougie Jerry didn't get it.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, treasury report.
Well, I'll get through this as quickly as possible because you obviously hear enough from me in this meetings. Sales
Did you
tax,
ask me one of you?
Yeah, right. Thank you, Kathy. Safety officer, we're gonna finish it.
I know. I found, I call a couple times a day.
Sheriff's out.
We're all good. Okay, can you run?
So, you stay right there.
It's okay.
Thank you.
You need another one?
These guys in the back of the bus.
I know, you're in front of me.
Yep. So it's a very unique year for me because I think this might be the first time in the 30 years that I've been here that the current year that we're in, I have nothing but good news to report to you. While we continue to have discussions about how terrible next year looks, it's a very odd dynamic that I haven't seen before. But the good news is this year is staying strong. Sales tax continues to trend upwardly. Year to date over last year, we're $980,000 more than last year. We still, as Supervisor Campbell alluded to, don't know the impact of, our largest employer leaving the area. That won't be felt probably until the second and third quarters of next year. But that shoe is coming. We can't ignore that it is. We just don't know. Is it 1%? Is it 10%? We don't know yet.
So I just want to expand on that for a second. So in the budget, I have raised it $1 million from 28.5 to 29.5, and we could possibly even hit 31 million this year. I'm being conservative because I don't know if it's going away. So you kind of got, and this is what I recognized in June, is why I've been saying right along, the financials are great, the outlook is horrible. And so we need to get in line with, that's the reality of it.
And the second page is our cash position, and one thing I did different this month for you is to show you where we were at this time last year. It shows that we're down around $3 million, which makes sense to me because we sent out $3 million, which I'm gonna tell you about in a couple of seconds, of last year's surplus to the capital projects and health insurance fund. So to me, we're staying nice and steady where we should be. Right? So even though it looks like 3 million less in cash, we sent that money out, right? So that makes sense. The budget's the actuals. I'm not gonna spend any time on there unless you have questions, because again, in the budget process, you're gonna get all that information that you need to know. I've included the county's fiscal stress scores for you. We remain, even though our score went up, we remain at no designation. And the conversation earlier, that's partially because we're running our fund balance at that 20%. That's the low level mark for the comp fund, right? 20% should be all of your goals of your fund balance. You know, they talk about 2 month operating, but it really is 20%. That's the number the comptroller is going to use to score, right? So the conversation I had with you earlier was about, please, let's not drop below that low level R, right? So that's just the fiscal stress scores for your information. My guess is you've all seen them at your town levels already. I've also included the Duke County amounts. So for those of you who haven't been here before, and even those of you who have that only hear this once a year, the summary page that looks like this. The very last column says 24 for 25 taxes. You have 2 options. You can pay that money to.
Can't read that column on our.
You can't read it.
Nothing.
Color went black.
So I'll
We
give
have
Debbie,
mystery page.
I'll give Debbie the Excel file so that it can be sent cleaner to you. Sorry. So the very last column, when you are able to read it, there's only 2 towns that have a credit this year. They actually get a check from me. Everybody else has 2 options. They can pay me direct and that Duke County goes away. Or if you don't pay it, it gets added to your levy and your taxpayers pay it as part of their tax bill in January. Right? So if whatever Duke County isn't paid directly to me, it ends up being part of your levy. So a lot of you have selected in the past to just pay that amount and not have it go on your tax bills because you have a conversation with your constituents. Oh, there's only a 1% increase this year. They get the bill and it's 3. Now you have to explain why the tax increase is different than what you told them. And it's a lot of times through things that we put on your bill, like workers' comp is imposed on your town-wide line by the county. So you end up having some uncomfortable conversations through something that you couldn't control. So a lot of you have chosen in the past to just pay that bill directly and make it go. No.
Do we get a bill on that?
0%?
If any of you who need an invoice for your board, I can actually prepare invoices as well.
Well, and you can see them on the very next page.
I don't know, I don't know if the detail sheets are any easier to
Your
read.
detail
for you.
sheets are real easy. If
Okay.
you've got
If those numbers are more legible, then there's your numbers as well.
right, if so, it's in parentheses.
And what's nice about the detail sheet is it actually shows you
Bragging, Brian.
it actually shows you the line, right? So a lot of you, when you ask me to invoice you, you want to know how much is townwide, how much is highway, how much is the lighting district? You actually want to know that. So this breakdown actually shows you what lines, right?
So you'll send that.
So anybody, just send me an email requesting an invoice and I'll get an invoice right back to you. And it'll be broken down like this so that you can see how that number came to be.
And this is the same number as the page before, but it's detailed,
Yes,
but we can't see it.
yeah, so. Right.
And maybe let the treasurer know by the end of the month. What if they're gonna.
Yeah, but if I could know by the end of October what your intention is, you don't have to send me the money. Just let me know which option you're choosing, because I have to forward that on to the clerk of the board because it matters in the levy conversation.
Now, can you just explain one more time
Yes, sir.
why this has come about?
So Duke County is usually from 2 events that happen, okay? The first event you can't control, and that's the surplus or deficit on the roll. So when you go and create the tax bills, you take and you divide the assessment by the dollar amount, and when that all blows back through the math, you might end up with, 1,999,000 instead of 2 million, right? So that deficit on the roll or shortage on the roll is something that comes back because you've made yourself whole, even though that amount of taxes wasn't levied. So that becomes into the county. The second factor that you also can't control, but you have a little bit more input into, is corrected bills. Most of these, a greater majority of these are from corrected bills in your town. And I can actually give you, for anybody who needs that information, I can tell you what properties contributed to this Duke County. Some supervisors have actually asked me in the past, well, what properties cause this number? Because some of them are not small dollar amounts. Especially some of the corrected bills could be for 2 and 3 years and they can add up quickly. So those are the two events that usually cause these Duke County amounts.
Corrected bills due to underpayment of county taxes.
So it's, what happens with a corrected bill is you have a resident that says, you assessed me for 200,000, I couldn't get 140 tomorrow. They grieve it, they file an Article 7, they win their Article 7. I then have to pay a refund to that taxpayer because they got their assessment reduced. You are then charged back to that because I've refunded on your behalf. Right, so I don't refund just the county portion, I refund the town.
Yeah, that makes,
Right, so those are Article 7 successful challenges.
okay,
Maybe I should have led with that because that's actually,
okay, now I understand.
so those are the two events that really bring that number about. But again, if you can let me know your option by the end of the month. I don't need the check by the end of the month, but let me know your option by the end. Sure. The very last page I gave you as a tool for the rest of today's discussion. Hopefully it has some value to you. What it reflects, again, is we're holding steady this year, right? So you're in a position where your financials look strong, but you're being told that there's a dark cloud looming over 2025. So if you look at the total fund equity this time this year versus this time last year, you see there's $2.4 million less. However, you took $3 million of last year's surplus and transferred that in 24. So that shows as a hit to 24. So if you were to net out that $3 million that you took from last year's surplus, you're actually up 554,000, right? So this year's financials are continuing to be strong. But remember that sales tax is driving almost $1 million of that, right? So I just thought that this might be a useful tool in the conversations that will follow.
And I hope everybody really appreciates that Al looks forward at this. We were starting to see this in May when it was going, so June was when I came out with it here. Because not every county treasurer, because we've worked with some of them, they don't tell the board anything. So we are quite informed and we kind of know where things are going because we're looking out at that and we want you to know rather than tell you next year, oh, remember how great it looked last year? Well, somehow that went to hell. No, we don't want to do that. We want to show you why we think it's going that way and where we're headed. And I can't thank everyone enough for what you did with the ARPA money to actually build the buildings and those are paid for. We didn't have to borrow for them. That was the right decision. I feel really good about that and can't wait to see their, finished product.
Just one more question now.
Yes, sir.
The amount that, if we ask you to invoice, that you would invoice is the amount in the last column.
So on the sheet that you can actually read,
Yeah,
the very far right total at the bottom of all your lines,
yes,
that's the number.
okay.
And the two towns that have the credit will actually get a check from me. I will make you whole for the credit.
And when would we have to pay it to you?
If, as long as I know by the end of the month, payment by the end of the year is fine.
Payment by the end of the year.
Yeah, and again, I'll send invoices to anybody who sends me a request for it.
What page is that on the one that we read?
It looks like this, the one you have in front of you.
H203.
So yours is $979.
Okay. He's got cash for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check the mail.
He's taking it out of the wallet right now.
Yes, sir.
Is the 3 million traceable on here that you say, or is it behind the scenes?
So unfortunately, it's behind the scenes because it's hidden in the income statement, which is not there.
Okay.
It's
It's a line on the income statement.
So there's an
So your
expense,
balance will be,
right, so there's two expense lines. One was an interfund transfer to capital construction for $1 million. One was an interfund transfer to the health insurance fund for $2 million. So those two lines on the expense statement is what drove that $3 million. But again, that's $3 million of last year that was done this year. So it's kind of misleading right? Because it's across years, right?
Thank you.
Sir,
What if, for Putnam, what if I look at just the roll into the tax? So that credit would go, just to. You gotta pay it out or you gonna apply it to the levy?
so I guess I would defer to Deb on how that flows through the schedule of taxes, like, I could actually not issue the check. And let it run through.
Right. Yeah, you could apply it against your rates,
Right.
the reduction.
But if you're up against the cap, that's the reason you pay it. If you're up against the cap, you can actually tax for that. If it goes on your bill, that has to come off your cap, right?
So the good news that in full transparency for you all, as much as I would love you to cut me a check, the Duke County goes on my cap.
Right, but in this
So
case,
I'm hit with the extra levels.
no, in this case, it's a refund, so. And I'm just weighing the options on how to account for it. I can bring it in as income. Or roll it
So
over.
if I was sitting in a town seat and I was your bookkeeper, I'd just run it through refund part of your expense and be done with it. As a revenue.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
The fiscal scores,
Yes, sir.
we get to it. What's the second?
So the environmental one is the stuff you can't control. Business is in your account, so it runs through all the different metrics on this report that's in here. So the fiscal stuff is the only score you can have any say in at all. The environmental score, you almost have this much say in.
And we're dinged right away because we don't have a hospital.
And there's factors that they measured that you couldn't change in our life.
Okay. So 6 would be good on that. If my score was 6 on that second one.
Sure. As long as you want to stay in that no designation,
And 0 on the first, 0 second.
that'd be beautiful.
Okay.
And even susceptible to stress is just like a warning, like a yellow flag, right? It says, hey, it looks like you're trending the wrong way, let's take a look at what you're doing. Right? It's the ones that are in designation that really need to reinvent themselves.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Very good. Thank you all.
Okay. Now we're on to budget. Or no, we could add the budget grant program.
Oh, you want me to do that too?
Yeah.
Are there resolutions for that? Sorry? A. So resolution A.
We're on resolution A.
As you've seen with some of our grant programs before, the timeliness of the payments matters. So my recommendation to the board is I've asked for these two to be included. So you have a list of authorized things for out of audit. Okay? You put like HUD grants and stuff in there before because the timing of the money getting out is important. I feel like these two grant programs, one almost requires it and one is gonna be a best practice. So it's my ask of the board to include these two grant programs in your out of audit list. So they get paid out of audit and then submitted to the audit committee. So the audit committee still reviews all these, you still see all of them. But you see them after the check has been issued. But again, it's the nature of the program that I think the timeliness of the payment actually matters.
Moved by Cassie, second by Carol. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. B.
Thank you.
Legislative board to purchase wireless microphone for the boardroom. Moved by Cassie, second by.
And I'll second it.
Second by everybody. Yeah. Until he sees the flag. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Resolution C, this one I hate paying because I don't think it should be our bill. I don't know if there's much we can do about it. We did pass it. At one point, I don't know where, Chairman, did you want to speak on that?
Well, if I fully intend to vote no on this resolution. You know, we gotta not pay it.
It's still in litigation.
I keep harping on that for ever since I've been here. What if we just don't do some of these things we're mandated to do? This one, if they steal it somewhere else, it's like $18,000. I say we don't pay it. I say we just don't pay this one. We don't think it's within the extent, not do it.
And the only thing that they could do is take whatever interest between the due date and whatever and throw it on our penalty.
Compared to the other stuff they're doing to us. You know, $30 million downstairs they're doing to us, so. It's a drop in the bucket, it's a shot across the bow, or what's that for me, I'm a game you want.
I'm in the same line of thinking, because everything that I read about this, I mean, what gives them the authority to do this? They're pointing to an authority, but I don't see this as a legitimate county taxpayers.
An option would be to pass the resolution. And then just have, if you don't wanna, you know, put the whole board, then just have the chairman say, well, it's on it. Does not pay it.
Well, this would go to the full board
You could,
Right.
you could pass the resolution, then not,
and then vote it down at the board meeting.
or not pay it, you could pass it and not pay it on it.
Can we just not pass it now and never send it to the board?
How about we just don't move it?
That's right.
Yeah, it's
Keep it
according to
sitting
what the
there.
effect, it's according to what effect you wanna have.
It depends on whether you wanna have the effect of the board, or just, you know, if somebody takes the heat, just the chairman takes it. That's the difference.
If we took a motion right now to not pay it out of finance, it doesn't go to the full board. That, and it's that dies
Yeah.
right here.
If you don't move it, if you don't move it.
Yeah, so I make a motion, we don't move it.
But-
You just don't move it. Don't make a motion after the meeting, just don't move it.
I know, that's basically what we're trying to make a point here to do.
Well, is that what you're looking for, is for us to send it to the full board and make the motion to shoot it down in the full board meeting? Is that what you're?
I don't care. I don't think it makes any difference. If they don't get a check, they're gonna.
Well, but then when we do this county liable, and here it kind of, kill it and it never.
It makes the treasurer liable, that's all. Charlie.
Since this, I hear, is in litigation, and we don't do anything, like it's not even here, you have to hold on to it as a possible future liability,
So I've sent a voucher to the board because that's my job.
and it's on your book then.
So, well,
Or not.
not yet, because it hasn't been entered anywhere. So one of the options that you could do, pass this resolution, get the money in the budget, have the voucher audited, and then at the full board meeting, when the report of the audit committee comes up, you then can direct the treasurer either not to pay it, hold it pending litigation. So you can run it all the way through the process, and then at the audit, when it comes time to accept the audit committee, then you could make a recommendation so that it's been,
So you'd
it's
amend.
been memorialized that you've told me, don't pay that bill.
You'd amend
The report of the audit committee. That's an
Watch to
option.
wear his life preserver and let us shoot it.
It's an option and it directs me to do or not do so. Right?
Well, puts it on the record, I kind of like that.
I don't, that's not bad. I'll make the motion.
We get it right once in a while.
You know, I get to be.
Don't forget.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be remind.
So shots across the bow.
So are we sending it to the board or are we next?
Yes, send it to the board. Go ahead, send it to the board.
Someone's gotta move it. So a motion to send it to the board.
I'll motion to send it to the board.
All right.
And we got a second.
Reluctantly.
I'm voting no.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Go tell that-
No.
He doesn't know what's gonna happen.
Jay said no.
Yeah.
Jay said no. You're up.
Oh,
Too bad you walked out here.
You get sick.
Oh, yeah. Everything's dying of thirst around Sheridan. I was like.
Did you get sick? Brian?
Yes.
Sorry about that. This meeting's gonna be long.
Okay.
Next.
Okay, resolution D is Department of Social Services revised IT contract.
Whoops.
Need a motion to move that money? And that's, their person is upstairs tonight. I will do it. Moved by Sam, second by,
We were asking Buster who we were doing.
I drew a blank. Yep. Yep. Second by Jim, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. E is DSS for computer equipment. Motion for computer equipment.
Rennie, right?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. F is create a capital project for the Safford Hill Road over Blight Creek Bridge reconstruction.
Move it.
Moved by Cassie, second by Daryl. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Is that the amount the county has put in, that 369, or is that,
The 18,186.
that's what our share is,
Yes.
180?
The 18,186.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
18,000.
Okay.
What
G,
is this number, total cost?
And that's just the engineering phase.
So that's not total cost, it's a long way after that.
10 times.
We're just starting.
Yeah, if you do a bridge for under $1 million.
Sounds like a Jackson.
We're the same ratio of fund later on.
Yeah.
God willing, they're 80, 15, 5. 80 federal, 15 state, 5 local is the Marshall standard agreements.
Okay, G is the CAD system.
Move it.
Second.
Moved by Cassie, second by Daryl.
Yep.
Okay, any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Here. H is to authorize the chairman to sign the agreement with Warren County for youth services.
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It looks like up next is natural gas. Natural gas agreement, this is coming up for renewal, and, these are the rates as of today, which are actually down quite a bit from the other day. So it's whoever has knowledge on where natural gas rates going can decide which months we
Yeah, we
want.
always got a crystal ball.
Yeah,
Let us know. Oh, we played this with the electrical, remember?
Right.
yeah.
Did we win?
No, we lost, but then we renewed it again for better. So it probably all came out fine.
Came out in the wash.
It came out the way it came out either way.
What's our, you thinking, kind of midway there?
12 months.
Well, the 12 months it is $1,000 cheaper, but like if next year's $2,000 more, you didn't gain.
Now, do you have a feel how it's run over the last several years? I know it's a separate, it's.
Without looking into it.
Yeah.
Same, I don't.
No, it doesn't matter, I just didn't know.
And just to clarify, it's just for the supply.
Yeah, it's just a supply side, just like our electric.
Right.
Random question, what does natural gas cost for the average home?
Don't have that.
It depends on like square footage. Depends like how much you're spending a year.
Yeah, but what's the rate
Uh,
in the county? I don't know.
Great, because I mean, propane is way less.
Yeah.
propane is like 419. Yeah.
That's all over, that propane's all over it.
280
280 yesterday.
It's kind of the way in from where I am.
Wow.
Yeah, there is one company that's $2 above everybody else, but yeah, no, it's like 280 range right now.
It was
Really good
229
company.
2 months ago.
That's why I'm asking, because I have no idea
Dana's
what
gonna have it.
Working on it.
he's at. I thought natural gas was supposed to be the whole idea, that's not worth it.
Well, National Grid's raising it. They got a thing in the state to raise that way up.
At least you have it, you don't have to worry about the kitchen fee.
No, you can't use gas over in kitchen anymore.
It's not everywhere.
Yeah, so what do we want to do, go say 36 or keep it 24?
Dana's checking the price for it.
Right.
Took me like half an hour to get a sales.
I believe the only natural gas is here in Fort Edward. I don't think you have any in Fort Ann. I don't think there's any in Salem.
Greenwood.
So you just, do you have a natural gas with gas station? Okay, so we're done.
Some of our
She
barns.
doesn't have any.
Yeah, no, I think it's very few jurisdictions for us to know much about it. It's whether we think it's gonna go to $5 or $6 is what we decide, but I'll be happy with whichever one you choose.
Are we waiting for information?
Yes,
Yes.
Trying to find it.
it's pressure though now, because we're not talking around them.
I don't feel it.
You don't feel it, okay, good.
Trial witnesses embrace the silence.
So the issue I'm running into is that I didn't use any gas. I gotta go back to get a bill. We don't run the heat in the summer.
That makes sense. You're very pragmatic.
How about your hot water?
We can need to check. We have-
What's the downside of going a short time like 12 months?
Cause we gotta fight over this again.
If
Another 12 months.
it doubled,
All that is just.
no, the downside would be if it doubled in two, in whatever
It went
year.
down.
Right, but if it goes
Well,
down.
only reason.
No, I agree.
It's a presidential year and I don't even know which way it would go if whoever won. But it could change for the better as well as change for the worse, right?
Well, I do know that National Grid is bringing the natural gas to the state to see if they can up the price. They gotta bring that to the commission.
This is a supply, right?
That's right. I do remember that, seeing that letter.
Yep. It's for electrical and gas.
Yeah.
Those are all pretty big rate increases is what they're proposing. I don't know how it's gonna impact this.
They don't even have electricity.
Well, if you're in Florida, you don't have electricity either.
John,
You don't see a
Heresy.
No.
Here's the wheel in the Chute River that water turns, that one wheel.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's right.
Is there a reason why we have to go through this specific company? I know Dave's got a place over in his town over there, right?
Yeah, no, this
Natural
is,
gas?
There's propane.
yeah, we want this mega thing. Whoever. So there are agent, like,
My personal home, I'm paying $14.29. For delivery. For supply.
wow.
It's probably time for me to look at change.
Hook up for that.
I mean, just in comparison, that's a residential.
But the more.
Yeah.
They're nicer to. I'll show you here what it is from last year, so it's actually down from last year. For the beginning of the year, and then it started to pick up.
In that, just,
That's
that's
statewide.
just supply though.
Yeah.
It ranges from, $6, $7 in 2012 to everything above 10 this year, except for June was 9, so I guess we can't go wrong on whichever one we choose. 21. So you would just want to take the cheapest one and roll the dice till next year and we do it again, so we're.
I don't know, there are two people said 24 months. I would have.
I'm willing to go with whichever one.
Yeah, well, there's no advantage in going 24 months over going 12 months. Because you're automatically raising, you look at your rate at 24, you're raising 11 cents immediately.
$1,100 a year amount.
And so you raise another 11 cents next year, we'd be better off with 24 cents in 2 years than 22 cents now because we didn't take a chance. I mean, running the
Let's go
numbers.
12
that's all
months.
I'm-
Good job.
Okay, motion to go 12. Let's go 12. Second by Dan. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Okay.
You got that there.
Set the date of the annual meeting,
No pizza today.
November 15th. Motion,
I know that.
moved by Ken, second by Ken. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, carried. J, determine time and place for public hearing of the 2025 budget. Motion by Kathy, second by Sam, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Resolution 290, set time and public hearing of introductory local law E.
This just set the public hearing,
Set the public hearing, yes.
with that.
Moved by Cassie, second by John Bell. And do a local law is override tax. And now we're on to, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Before you get into the meat and potatoes, can I do two quick others?
You certainly can.
One, the sheriff has a grant that we put everything for the grant into point two. As he's working through the grant, part of it is now software that doesn't qualify as point two. So we just need a resolution to move from his point two grant line to a point four grant line. And the amount's gonna be $10,000 out of it.
Motion by Cassie, second by Dana. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you. And the other, just a quick report. As you know, the part of the changes in the real property tax law, one of the good things that came out of it was our ability to offer installment contracts to those people who were headed to the auction. I have so far 10 fully executed agreements. Less than I thought, but it's 10 people that won't be headed to auction right now. So thank you for that.
Hey, Al, do they still pay them the back ones first? Does they work their installments?
So the installment contract with me takes care of all their back taxes and monthly installments, and then they have to stay current going forward.
Oh, okay.
So the discussion is now moving on to, what overriding the tax cap and equal. Or if we want to go there, how we would go there. And hopefully we'll be able to vet the difference between 8% sales tax and just overriding the cap for a different number. I'm hoping that we'll bring out enough discussion to where we'll all see where, when, and why we would ever do either things. Which is hard to imagine to get that all done in one day. But it's kind of where we're at. We know what the 8% sales tax would do. It was approximately $10 million per year, approximately 3 years from ever seeing that. So what goes with that is the amount of sales tax that 1% would be to each person that spends money in our county, which I would get, I'm just gonna guess that that's 90% would all be people within our county. It might even be higher. Because we don't have a huge amount of people that probably buy things within the county from outside. That's just my guess, especially when Amazon delivers stuff to people's homes now. So we looked at these numbers and you've got 3 sheets here that show your tax levy. The first page shows where the 2% cap approximately is right there. The other sheet shows a tax levy increase of a total of 5% or a total of 10%. Now, when I was just looking at it, it was kind of interesting. I tried to break it down on my own yesterday. And that's why I have our director here from Rural Property, because I'm sure there's things that all of us miss on these sheets that need to be explained at certain times. And so you go, it looks like everybody's going down. The problem with that is the percent increase in the second column on the right side, second column back, shows, oh, everybody's saving, but it's not true because your valuations went up so much. So the rate, there's a savings. There might be a rate on dollar per thousand, but if the value of your house has gone way up, you're actually gonna end up paying more tax. So in the broad scope of things, just looking at actual dollars per 100,000, it went from a range of $35 to $40 down per 100,000 at the cap. and at 5%, down around 15 or somewhere, you know, either side of $15, and up 10% shows around the 12 or $13 mark in every town. So if you just looked at the 10%, said, geez, really only $12 per 100,000, why wouldn't we do it? Well, when you break down and see the difference, there's a difference of like $50 per 100,000 between one to the other. So, because you gotta take the negative and add it to the positive. So it's a whole different gamut. And so that's the way I try to analyze it. And maybe Miranda can add, you know, add some more sense to it than that, but that was just a bird's eye look as to how it might work. The 2% cap, as much as we hate it, it has kept taxes from rising faster than they normally would. There has been that benefit to it. Before the tax cap, I was here for probably 5 years before that. We would always fight over the thing. We'd start at 40%, get to 30, 20, 10, and we'd usually settle in around somewhere in the 3 to 5% range. And then with the 2% cap, it was basically believed we would just go to the cap. But times change, things evolve, boards change. So that's how we got here. And of course, with inflation, all costs rise. And so our taxpayers are seeing it from all directions. Their price to just put food on the table is bigger. And I can't believe they're gonna welcome a huge tax increase at this point in time. They may understand it, but really not like it. So I'm just trying to figure out direction from the board, where you want to go or what you want to do, because if I need 3.7 million out, that's 10%. And I don't think that's what we want to do. When we talk 1%, 370 doesn't get us a lot. So that's the discussion I want to have and see where that goes. You're first.
Yeah, I was kind of closing up to that last one. So ideally, from Al's perspective, that's 10% cheap.
Yeah.
What I'm getting.
That's what you'd like to get off the actual fund balance, but you still wouldn't be to zero fund balance, and that's even scarier, yeah. Okay. Dan.
Yeah, just, more clarity on using the 5% increase. The last column on that sheet, it says per 100,000 equalized.
Yes.
In the town of Easton, it says for every 100,000, does that, the taxes raise $571?
No, that's the bill.
That's a total bill.
That's what the bill would be on 100,000.
Okay, not the increase.
No, right, Brian? That's
Right.
the bill amount.
That's
Right.
the total amount.
Right.
Okay.
So basically between 5% and 10%, it's looking at, let's look at Whitehall just because it's the bottom of the column.
Yep.
So we look on per 100,000 equalized at the 5%, they're gonna be paying $575 if their house is worth 100,000. But with the 10%, they'd be paying $602,000. So it's going up $25 per thousand or per 100,000. However, there's not many houses left in the county that's at 100,000.
Right, so double the
Dollar value.
200,000.
So
Yes.
say if your house is 200,000, it's really going up $50 instead of $25.
Yep. And so 10% would be $100 if you did that, correct?
No, so the 10%, it's going up from 575 to 602. So it's going up $27
For every 100,000.
per 100,000. So if you have a $200,000 home where your assessment's 200,000, it's going up almost $60.
Okay.
So the higher number your house is, the higher your taxes are gonna be raised, but. And then if you look for, let's see which one is not increasing.
And what changes it is like somewhere at 100. So if you drop to 100 to 95, but the other person went to 100 and another one dropped from 100 to 70, it throws everything into flux. So it's a hard one to follow because we're all at such different levels. Whereas when we did the reval, we didn't know things were gonna get this crazy and we thought everyone would be around 100 and that's no more. We believe in 2 years, Hebron could be to 50 and we're only to 75 right now. That's how much prices are changing. And I don't know if any of you guys pay attention to what homes actually sell for in the area. But there's a lot of homes at the $300,000 level right now.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when I first came on the board, you could go by this sheet in 100,000. Now you just gotta multiply it by 3, you know, to get what the increase is.
Right.
So
And don't
that's-
forget, at the county level, you're all equalized. We bring you all to 100% before we distribute the county tax.
Right.
So where Brian, his value in Hebron went up, so he's gonna get more of the sales tax distribution. But his town is also gonna pay more of the county levy, so there's a, there's a give and take there.
But that's if other towns also didn't raise at the same rate. So if he raised at a different rate than everyone else, then he's gonna be paying more. But if him and 4 other towns raised at the same rate, it doesn't necessarily mean that their taxes are gonna go up.
But by him already knowing his allocation, he already knows.
Yeah, we already know from the sheet.
Yeah.
The sheet we know.
Look at Port Ann, you finished your reassessment, didn't you? see?
Yes.
Look at the impact that your assessment had on.
Yeah. And that's the part that bothers me with the sheet because I'm sure it tells Sam he's going down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when people get their checks, they're gonna say, what? And it didn't go down. So, yeah, that's where the problem lies. Is the percentage is on the rate, it's not on what you are actually gonna pay. So,
It's the political will there, anybody won't get 10%.
I didn't do that.
Miranda's got gifts.
It's just on how to explain the equalization rate at a way that you guys can look at it later.
and it's something we all need to understand better.
Yeah.
No matter
kinda
how
breaks
much
it
we-
down a little bit.
Yeah, no matter how much we've worked with it, you can always learn more. on this.
So if you take a look at it, we're currently using 3.7% fund balance, or 3.7 million.
No, we're using 5.
Maybe
5.
24.
I'm trying to get us down to 5. This year might be, this year might have been.
But the issue is that only kicks the can down the road. At a certain point, we're gonna have to have another impact next year. We're not gonna have the fund balance to cushion it. We're gonna have a double whammy. We don't fix it somehow this year, it's gonna be twice as bad next year, maybe potentially greater, because we already know that healthcare is probably gonna go up another 30%. We don't know what the impact of retirement if they change from 6 to maybe 6.4, because we'll have some back retirement pay to catch up for 5 and 6 adjustment before. I mean, so many wild cards here that even if we did it this year with fund balance, plus make a 5 plus another 5 or 6 next year, when are you gonna start fighting the bullet?
Well, that's really how I started the meeting, was we're really gonna have work rates globally right from the get-go as we start the new year. But how we wanna do it in this budget is the biggest question. And Warren County wants to hear from us on whether we will join them in their, take extra sales tax. So I wanted you to see what overriding the cap does once. If you're raising somebody's taxes $100 on their house one time, that's one thing. If you're gonna do that every time, maybe they're just as well off with the sales tax and it takes care of itself. Either way, there's pros and cons, and I would like to hear from the board what they are. I had trouble realizing at the beginning when we brought Tim Havens in because he's so opposed to the sales tax increase. And when you break it down this way and you look at the cost of homes and what that number is, and you're like, he's not totally wrong, that just put it on your sales tax because it's there, you know what it is, and if the person's renting the house, that'll get added onto their monthly rate, and it almost does the same thing. The only downside on that is anybody that comes through the county that buys gas, that doesn't live here, you get extra sales tax from them. I don't have any way to quantify what that possibly would be, or if it is enough to even make a difference. So that's kind of the discussion, is where our board is at. Cause there's all sorts of alternatives, but or, options with each one. I just don't know which one's better, and I would like some input from everyone if you got it.
I have a question. The first page. That is, if we don't go over the tax cap.
Yes, that's where we're at right now.
The second page is 5% over the tax cap.
5% in total, so it'd be like 2.5% over.
And
Because it
then,
is 2.5, so it's like that.
and 10% would be 5% over the tax cap.
Would be 10% total over last year's budget.
So
So 7.5.
Right.
7.5.
Over the tax. Cap.
Yes.
Yes.
So that'd be a total of.
10%.
And that's where we come up with the $200,000 house at $60.
Depending on which town you're in. That was just an example for White House.
Well, that figures up good for me.
If anyone has any questions, they can come and see me and I can try to explain it a little better.
Yeah, did you get one of these? The handouts, with the sheets, did you get one of the sheets with the handouts on it?
That's number one.
Yeah, get it out of the corner, Nina.
So do we want to go around the table and everyone give their opinion, or have a question? Where do we want to start?
Say probably. Pull on the road, it would go.
Well, you be first.
And I want to stay at the cap this year.
With that,
I want to stay at the cap this year.
you'd like to stay at the cap.
I don't want that to fund out for 1 year. Since the third of January, see what happens. My reason always for pushing this overriding the cap was not to override the cap. You know, it was to send a sign that when you override the cap, you're gonna run right to the max. I'm kind of against it, right?
Dave?
I'm looking at next year, the year after. And by using the fund balance to draw it down and keep it down below the tax cap. I just am afraid that we're going back to increasing double or more than that next year. And that impact is gonna be double. I would be for phasing it in and not putting a double whammy on the taxpayer in 1 year.
So what's your phase-in number?
What's your basic number? I think that percent's probably.
Oh,
That's
we
a
know
phase-in
that,
number.
that's not
That's
phasing
phase-in
numbers.
number,
That's
okay.
all off the side of the building.
We're off to a good start. Dana Hogan.
I'm opposed to going above the tax cap at this time.
Reason.
I want to know more about what concerns Al has with our expenditures during the past year.
John Rozell.
I'm against going over the tax cap this year.
Dave Scully.
I'd like to stay under the tax cap, but I'd like, when Al mentioned that we haven't really looked at things in our own house and our own business as far as taking care of our people and taking care of what we gotta do. Are we under the tax cap? And issues out of our control and pushing us over the top? That's, are we doing a good job? And there's just other things out of our control pushing us over. I'm kind of curious.
We're afraid of both.
I think that's the way.
Yeah,
We're doing it for good jobs.
and I remember when Jimmy Lindsay was chair of the board, and he said, how the hell is the tax cap gonna work at 2.5%? We always go up 8. But what was really working for us was that growth in sales tax. And we saw the biggest growth when we had internet sales tax. And so it really took care of it. Now they've mandated even more, and we're taking care of more people. The big expense I see is the last 2 years in net cost to DSS going from 5 million to 8.2. It's just a huge number. So every 10 million you raise there, it's 2.5 million right to our county taxpayer. And so in 5 years, we went from 18.8 to just under 31 million in what's requested. And so you're talking a 12 million, there's 3 million that you wouldn't use in fund balance if that stayed the same. But now I know the economic situation has changed around the country, around the world, whatever. It just seems wrong that it's happened to a rural independent county like Washington. But I gotta believe, the culture, the drug world, those things all cost us money. So it's a tough one.
You said that 10 million part is 2.5 million, because you're using that.
So 25%.
75%
Yeah.
is reimbursed.
Right.
I wouldn't agree to anything more than 5%. Even at the cap or somewhere, even if it's over a little bit. And the reason why that is because at town level, we're at the cap. So for anybody cringing about fund balance, you gotta remember your towns are gonna be at the cap too, unless you're diving into your fund balance. Which we all have, over the last couple of years, I know I have.
We always have, I kind of do it the same way as the county. I will put in fund balance, but the idea is to never use it. And more times than not, we've been able to do that. But you gotta be real careful on controlling your costs, that there's nothing extra and, you stay within your means, but you can't give the raises you'd like to give or maybe should give, but you give what you can bear. So,
I would go with 5%. I'm looking at the rate for the town and looking at what the 2024 final was. And for sound, for the 2024 final, our rate was 572 for $100,000 of equalization. And then you look up at 2025 at 5%. It actually went down to 560. That's at 5%. For intense, the people in my town is helping us, but also not hurting us.
I think everybody, I voted no on breaking the tax cap twice, so I'm still there.
I might have a different opinion on this altogether, because when we're talking about a $200,000 home, all else being equal, and we raise a permanent tax by $100 on that home, you've made that home now $195,000 home. 50 times the amount that you raise tax above inflation is going to be the net present value. So when you buy a home, you're buying a $200,000 home, and your mortgage tax, the tax. You raise taxes faster than inflation, you lower the home value, which is a hit in the equity of the homeowner. If they go up evenly, it stays the same. Which is why you go to North Carolina and the shacks are $500,000. Property tax on $500,000 shack in North Carolina is $800. Here, we have a permanent tax in a lot of our counties, which is killing homeowner equity. So I factor that in. I'd rather see use tax paid than equity values knocked down out of homes.
So the way you presented that, my question is, so you believe that home values are going down, or the increase in the value is just inflation? Is that where I'm coming from?
there's a lot of studies that are starting to make more points on it. You can see it. If you had two homes right on a county line or town line, but and one home is identical to the other. And because of the good fortune in one county, their tax levy is half of the other. Those homes will not sell at the same price. If one home has a $5,000 tax levy, and the other home has a $2,500 tax levy because of good fortune, those homes are no longer the same value. This is an assessor's nightmare for comparisons in around areas as well. But in reality, when you raise taxes higher than the inflation rate, you're lowering the growth rate of the home value, lower than the inflation.
It's interesting because it's almost a different version of the way we heard it years ago, like at the time, a $200,000 house in Saratoga County, or a $200,000 house in our county, might be a $400,000 house in Saratoga County. So our tax was double the rate as theirs was, but you paid the same tax for the same house, you just had a different value. And you've kind of taken it a little step further, which is very interesting.
From wherever you are, whenever we raise a permanent cost faster, you take your housing budget as a person or family, you're now putting the assessed value will go, it just will go down. People will pay less. Owners want to sell more when they sell, but who's going to pay more?
That hasn't been our experience in the county. I guess it's the problem. I see exactly what you're saying. It's how it should work. What's happened here, or correct me, anybody, if you think I'm wrong. We see a huge influx from the people coming from the city to our area that have made the demand higher than the houses that are available. So we have, nothing's going down. And as you can see, we were up here 9.5% just in the assessed value after it's equalized.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is absolutely true. We've been very fortunate in that way.
So you're saying that could turn around, and I agree with the science behind that. We haven't seen it yet, so I don't know where the happy medium is. And furthermore, with that, you take our elderly, they might have built their house for 50,000. It's now assessed for 250,000. And that rate on that is, once they're on a fixed income, is hard to make. So, which is kind of along the same lines of what you're saying. So you would rather stay at the cap then?
I think everything we raise in taxes, all other things being equal. So if you're introducing the fact that people are coming up here to pay more for houses, that's good. But if that's stopped, all other things being equal, you're lowering the property value at the cost of increased taxes.
So when you say use tax, you're talking
Sales tax.
Sales tax, any other revenues, right? Which is not a popular concept, but taxes on property in certain locations have gotten so high, and you look at homes in different locations that look identical, and the values are 40% difference. In upstate New York, values of homes are 40% lower than would be if they were in North Carolina. Because of taxes.
Right here. So I know we can't fix it with this idea this year, but I'd like us to look at raising the sales tax, which isn't popular either, to 8%. One of the reasons I have in that is the taxes are paid by the landowners. The services are not necessarily going to those people. So if you raise the sales tax, everybody in the county is helping to pay for the county bill. Whereas when we just raise the taxes, it's only the landowners or anybody that owns property that's paying for all these services that we probably aren't using. So I definitely am interested in pursuing raising the sales tax, so these non-owners can contribute to the budget. That being said, landowners also don't want to do the 10% jump. I'd rather see somewhere between the 0 and the 5, or the tax cap and the 5, so that we don't get with a big hit down the road. I think we know this is going to be a bad couple of years, and we need to start taken a little bit of a hit, so it's not a huge hit. So I'm open to somewhere between the cap and the 5%, but I really would like to try and start that 8% sales tax to help take the burden off the landowners. Property owners, I should say.
Tim?
I think Dave had something first.
I was gonna say,
No, let's go around.
He had his
Yeah,
turn.
that's what I was.
I'm against going over the tax cap.
I'm willing to go to the 5%, and my reasoning is following. First of all, with what was said earlier about the effect on the price of the equity of home. We start cutting our fund balance because we're trying to stay at the tax cap. Eventually, we're going to have to start taxing more. So I'd rather start doing that. That's one thing. Secondly, don't forget, we've been living off of ARPA money for quite some years. And that's gonna end. And that has an effect. I know we can't use it to lower taxes. We have been using it to pay for things. It might still,
That we never would otherwise have.
well,
We didn't put in, you know, they
I
put
know.
up the salary.
I know, but
Well, no, we would not done it. It'd have fallen down first.
nevertheless, it's a source of money that we had. So I just think we need to do it, but then I reiterate what I said before. Starts in January. We look for efficiencies.
Sam?
Yeah, I'm with Dana on this, and I'd like to see the other numbers before I actually commit, but I would be looking at 0 to 5% increase. But I think we all need to realize that's kind of an anomaly, because once you raise it, then that becomes your new number. So what happens is, you stay below that to next year, you tell the residents, oh, we stay below the sales cap, or we stay before the cap. And then the next year, it goes up and up and up. So if we're gonna do it, I'd rather see us do it all at one time and have it done, rather than just piecemeal it and have to do it every year and say we go with the cap every year. Do it once, we gotta do it. But I'm a no right now until I get the other information and data.
So, and then the other part of this is when you override the cap, you, one we're short of is raise the age money. 100 and
We don't know,
some thousand.
we don't know the impact.
Right, we don't know totally, but that's like on the low end, around 100,000, maybe two. The problem is a lot of things are being switched to like in DSS for raise the age because it's 100% funded. So if it went away and everything was being switched there, who knows if the sky's the limit? I have no idea. And you might know more about that than any of us.
Well, I think for raise the age on the probation end, it's more the initial services while the case is pending.
Yeah.
When you get to reimbursement, that's usually getting into placement. It's obviously gonna be far more expensive. So that's why I think the number on the probation is far smaller. than the
Right, so if they're in the process of actually switching, that would cost us a lot more money at that point. Or could. has a
It could, I
potential.
mean, if they decide to move the pretrial services from probation to DSS, that could be a different conversation, but I couldn't answer that right now.
So those are the things, it's hard to have that crystal ball and know, but those are the things we're having.
We didn't get asked me yet.
We didn't ask Nate.
Oh,
He's hiding.
where did we send it today? Nate.
well, we had our preliminary budget all set. Then we got the notice that that's our punch to the forehead from the insurance company, what our retirement rate is going up. And we had to go right back to square one. And I do not want to use any more fund balance on the budgets that we already have. So tonight we're going to override the tax cap. But I don't think it's going to go over well, but we had no more options. And county has even less options with the amount of state mandates that they have. And as we've all discussed, I think one of the primary purposes for the building is public service and public safety and the roads. And we have no room moving anything, just really hard decisions are made. Well, I can't see the cap, I think 5% is in order.
we're just out of options with the healthcare costs. If Marshall Sterling, her broker said, it's all due to the reduction. So these costs are just getting passed right on down to everybody all the way. It's, terrifying times and you will see the future. So how many towns actually are gonna override the cap this year?
Probably.
Probably.
I don't pass the law, we're not.
I don't know yet.
We're gonna be William Craig Wolf.
Wow. Boy, wait.
I mean, Brian, in our town alone, our health insurance costs went more than my allowable cap. So you don't have a choice right there. I mean, we haven't passed ours, but where's the logic? Like, you can't. Health insurance is up more than our cap allowance.
We raised ours 2 years ago. Last year, we stayed under the cap because we raised it enough before. We're gonna be able to hold the line, I think, this year, but next year it's gonna be raise it again. I mean, I don't see any way to cut the expenses to continue to go up and we're gonna cut some of the services.
I broke the cap 3 years in a row. Just for expenses going up and I am a person. This year, I'm on the border. But with equipment costs, next year I'll probably have to do it again.
The state's unrealistic in the cap. It's not keeping pace. It's not.
We have 4 or 5% inflation, and it's just now getting down, so still chasing that.
Question is, what happens next year, if inflation goes up again?
We have a willingness to override the cap at some point here, whether it be this year, next year. I'm gonna try to bring the budget under the cap. And so then you're gonna have to add back in what you want to do to go over that.
But you're gonna give us a list of what you changed
Yeah.
from this one.
Right.
I don't wanna be
So-
sitting in the meeting having to vote and
So the biggest thing I wanna bring up
Minute,
was
not
the
know.
road, the Greenwich Road. I'll get it wrong, it's 49.
County 49.
County 49. To me, it was $800,000. We went and had a nice discussion with Deb. And we can actually use fund balance to make that happen if it need be. But at the same time, I think we need to have a discussion with Deb that, you know what? If in 3 years that's paid for, why are we putting out $800,000 of county dollars? Let's suffer through the 3 years, even if it costs 150 to get there, and let that get paid for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your blade is gonna be paid.
Well,
for a year.
and we will hit, like, the money will be there, cause I'm gonna let her, I'm gonna put it in the budget in a way she can use fund balance to do it. If she finds out that this is never gonna happen, she can still go ahead and do it. But that money will still be there for the following year if it makes the list and whatever. But you can't just, we waited for going over here for 3 years. It was supposedly real bad. I never had a problem getting here over going. That was probably one of the better routes I was on all the
Probably
way
digging
here.
out big gigantic holes over there.
Yeah, I knew how to spread. So, but here we are now and it's a new road and we're out a very small portion of that. So I think for our local taxpayers, we gotta be a little careful on just saying, oh, we want it done yesterday, so we're gonna pay the whole bill. If the federal government have put us in this position, we kinda gotta use their goods to help us stay out of a worse position. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody, but that's kind of the way I look at it. I can wait a little time as long as it's not a hazard and they can still spend money to keep it patched so that it's passable and not dangerous.
Yeah, I think that on that particular project, my end's the worst end. And I would say, if we can wait everything, probably Jim and I, neither one of us like the number of calls we get. That's light and fast lane. If we gotta cut particular project, particular services, that's why I would start.
I mean, we went through all our numbers. There is a way.
Well,
And a rim.
you guys would be both.
Well, there's a way to leave it all. I'm making it so it can be done without, raising taxes more to do it. So she can still do it, but I just want to leave the opportunity that if she can get that on a list and it's paid for in 3 years, I don't want to put our county dollars in.
as Bob said, 49 on my end, I get a lot of calls. So I went out and drove it. And there's parts of it where you literally have to go into the oncoming lane unless you want to go through. So if we delay it, we still gotta do
We still should
something.
patch it, yeah.
Yeah.
And we still have plenty of money for that, so. So that's just, maybe we have to look at how we do things just a little bit different. So on the sales tax issue, who is definitely opposed to raising sales tax? So we have 4 people. Well, that's, I just wanna know, because the questions are gonna be asked, and where do we push, where do we pull? And
Warren County.
And Warren County wants an answer, not that we have to fight
Yeah,
anything
sure,
with them.
sure.
Right.
You know, you worded that a
Warren
little
County doesn't like
different, Brian, I voted along with those 4. You
Oh,
said
wait, so-
definitely, and I'm
what they
not
did.
definite, I'm opposed right now.
Well, it's I enjoyed Charlie's discussion because we're used to looking at things the way we always look at them. And I had never kind of looked at it that way with, if all things being equal, eventually you probably would drive down the cost of your house by just raising taxes.
Well, you
So-
know what I think the voters are gonna have, and this is why I've been kind of opposite in my voting here today. Is if we are that bad a shape and we are so desperate to consider 8% sales tax and so desperate to break the tax cap, we haven't got anything. All we've done is raise and add another 1%, another how many million, 8, 10 million it would be. We're gonna spend that like crazy. And that's, the mentality is wrong for this. That's why I won't support the sales tax increase. I mean, when things are really tight and tough, the only, it's the same as in your own personal home. I mean, you've gotta live without. Now, is it fair? Is it fair to your children if you have little children to live without? But you don't have anybody in your own home to fall back onto. We got taxpayers to fall back onto. And I don't think we're showing enough initiative to our representative or to our people that we represent. That's why I'm voting the way I voted. And I'm not in any way pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just saying that's what I feel.
The reason I'm opposed is 2 reasons, actually. Number one, you raise the sales tax. It doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna bring 8 to 10 million in. Because if you raise the sales tax,
They may spend less.
they may spend less. And as an example of that, Al, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you've stated that the great majority of our sales tax comes from auto sales. And I think that people come to Washington County to buy their automobiles because of that 7% tax.
Well, no,
Which one you're
that's
spending.
always the same, whatever county you live in, that has no bearing. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude, but, no, so wherever you buy your car. So if I go buy one in Vermont, Timbuktu,
So
or in
it's where
Warren
you
County,
live.
it's 7%.
Okay, sorry.
So, yeah, so no, I
Okay.
just wanted to
All
correct
right, so my second reason I think is still valid. And that is, it's a regressive tax. And I don't like that. It's a regressive tax in that someone who's making 45,000
that. You sound like a Republican.
is going to pay, gas tax, are going to pay tax on clothing and other things. And it's going to hit them a lot more than somebody who's making 250,000.
I don't know, because they might buy more expensive stuff.
And a lot more of it.
I shop at Walmart, somebody else is probably
All
shopping at
taxes are
Brooks
regressive.
Brothers.
All taxes, not just sales tax. I think that has to be understood.
Property taxes are up because most poor people don't own a house.
It shows up in the rent.
There's an aging population. We tend to think of regressive in very strange social terms. The ones we think are affecting, if you look at our aging population, property taxes are pretty damn aggressive.
Yeah.
Well, we've been put on the spot. Now I'm gonna ask Al. Which way would you lean with the overriding the tax cap or not overriding?
neither until I know you've made all the cuts that you can make it better.
Okay, so that stems right back to Dan's. I like
We
that
just
answer.
had 60,000 today, that's how good we feel about things, and now we want to break the tax cap to do it. We're talking about an 18.
I didn't have that budgeted.
And I'm not being facetious, Supervisor. Before Brian prepared these sheets, and I actually thank him for it, because I would have gone 8% all day long. When I saw these sheets, it definitely was an eye opener for me on what 2.5, 5, and 10 actually mean. And a resident in Whitehall paying $27 more on their property tax might be significantly less than they're paying, because remember, you're gonna pay sales tax on your IMO bill, your cable bill, your telephone bill, your gas. So that same resident that paid $27 more in their property tax with an 8% sales tax may be paying more in sales tax than, so while both feel distasteful, seeing the numbers was an eye opener for me. Because when I went into this conversation, I felt 8% was spread over a bigger pool of people. That seemed like a no-brainer, but the numbers don't lie, right? Seeing these numbers was a very, very different scenario for me. Because percentages, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, but percentages can be fear-mongering. When you convert those percentages to real dollars, then the number what's my favorite saying, the math doesn't math, right? So as a resident, I might want to pay $27 more to the county than $127 more to the retail in sales tax. So it's a very different, I come at it from a very different angle, but I will still beat the drum. There are things that I might need a sheriff escort out of the building if I told you the cuts I wanted to make. But there are cuts, there are hard decisions that can be made. They'll just be very, very unpopular. Internally.
And the sheriff might not escort you if they're.
And the sheriff might not escort me if he's But I mean, unfortunately, one department specifically will feel beat up on, but it's a department that there are opportunities. Because we don't, to the chairman's point earlier, our discretionary budget is actually a very small part of what we do. So one of the big discretionary departments is a place where I have ideas, they're just extremely unpopular.
And that's something we gotta do in January, right? That's kind of what we're saying.
If you don't do it now,
Right.
then a commitment to start it.
Well, it's a little late now. We didn't start that, but we need to start it in January and.
You can make these cuts in this budget, sir.
Yes, sir, I was just gonna say that. I know some of these things he's talking about, and I think there are.
I'm really glad I shook your page. Thank you.
And just maybe since we're talking about sales tax, if we go up 1% to raise $100 more, that's on what, $10,000?
$10,000.
So you have to spend $10,000 to get $100 in increase, which would be same as $100 increase in your home. So if they have 10,000 taxable, they spend $15,000 on taxable goods, we will be getting more revenue with 1% increase than the tax increase of $100.
And not only that, we gotta remember that if your town is overriding the tax cap, that's also more money, right? Cause that compounds. So, and what I've seen interesting with other counties and how sometimes the towns will raise on opposite years that the county breaks the cap. So, because the towns can get away with it, when the county stays at 0 or the cap, it doesn't look so bad. You do it both the same year, you're gonna get a different look from your taxpayer. Cause yeah, it's not the 20 or 30 bucks you thought. It's just the way it is. So it's very convoluted, but this is helpful. I just need to know where the direction is, not 10 minutes from now, but over the next 5, 10 years, where do we want to head? And so it's nice to hear from everyone. I do want to hear what parts Al wants to, God, but I don't know if Al wants to do that in open session or talk to us privately.
Like I said, they won't be popular, but I have no problem running through my list.
He's ready. He's ready.
Can we go back to drink water first and then?
Ready.
Pen
and everything ready.
No, but I'm gonna pack M&M's on my chalk.
Anybody else? Dan, put a smile on your face.
Some of this.
Ghetto smile going. God, my goodness gracious, God, look at you. What a bouquet of flowers.
Keep it going. Fill her up. I can step on it.
You recommend the Twix, John?
You'll appreciate this, you know, the old apartment going in on Tracy.
Closed session, we gotta get chat before everyone comes back. So, in the requested, budget tax levy, which is the cap, the countywide equalized value is down to 516. Actually dropped 40 cents from last year. Even though we're gonna grab more tax dollars. So. Obviously, where Charlie went wasn't where I expected anyone to go today. It's very interesting. But if that was being equal and our prices were being driven up, we would be headed more towards the prices of regions around us, which I don't know how fast or how escalated that could get. But that means if you were dropping with that kind of increase to our assessed value, we in due time would end up down in the $403. It doesn't take long. It goes like that. I had no crystal ball to tell me how many years of they can get there. But that would take what he mentioned actually off the table, because we would be equal or somewhere close. So it just gives you a whole different look on how we perceive things, and we've never been good at understanding this real property information. We've all had to at times when we have a revale in our own towns, you have to figure it out. I was lucky enough, that was my crash course when I became supervisor in a revale. And it was a bad experience, but we survived it. But yeah, so at the cap level, at least we're driving the tax rate down, and that's what everybody looks at when they're on Zillow. They want to know the tax rate, how you got there, whatever. So that's a good reason to not escalate it higher, because we're headed the right direction, because the values are going up. That's, and the only way you can keep doing that is probably with cutting things, and we're not gonna hear from Al.
So the items that I look at, $500,000 increase over chips. Paved with just chips. Paving the chips level, $500,000 right there. We used to do that, we've kept up to the roads just fine-ish, right? Not, is it perfect? No. The chips money will get us still a decent amount of money, it's like 4.2 million or something. Right? I mean, it's a decent number. $300,000 increase in bridges, keep bridges flat. Deb herself said we've cleared a lot of the red flag. I understand she doesn't want to get behind again, but I think you can still keep our maintenance up at the current level. Deb may or may not agree. So there's 800,000 between road and bridge. Brian's willing to appropriate $800,000 over fund balance now. Okay, cut that 800,000 and appropriate 800,000 over fund balance. That 800,000 general doesn't have to send to her. So now you've saved 800 in her fund, another 800 in general fund, so you're 1.6 million in already, 3 slices. I still believe that you can do an 8-year replacement on your plow trucks, also not a popular just opinion. That would make us buy 3 trucks instead of 4 at $330,000 a piece. So you're now $1.9 million in 4 decisions. I continue to beat the drum that we have too many cars in our fleet. Every department head that we approach gives me 1,000 reasons why they can't reduce their fleet cars. Nobody's willing to try it. Nobody's willing to make the hard cut. And we've even made the promise, try it for a year. If it doesn't work, we'll come back and readdress it. Nobody's willing to even make the hard decision. Because this stuff isn't easy. The cuts that are necessary will have some growing pains. They will. I'm not saying that they're easy cuts, but we have to show that we're doing something. We can't just keep, the cover page of our budget should say, here we grow again. I can't continue to just sit silent because I'm afraid what people think about it. We have to look at this stuff deeper. We have to find the happy medium between not getting behind in deferred maintenance again and our duty to the taxpayers to give them some kind of reasonable living to live here.
What kind of savings do we can get on the cars up?
So there's current savings in that each of the departments that has a fleet car pays in, so general fund pays carpool for the cars that they have. So if you reduce the amount of fleet cars, you instantly reduce the transfers from general fund to the fleet, right? You should also, by extension, reduce the maintenance costs, tires, oil, there's routine maintenance, even on new cars, right? So the maintenance costs go down, repair costs go down, the fleet billings to general fund go down. You're not replacing them at $48,000 a piece. And the only increase that the offset would be that we've already made it easier, thanks to the county administrator, for employees to choose or use their personal vehicle. So we already have a department, and I'll give them kudos because public defender has already embraced this. They have one fleet car that randomly gets used. Their attorneys choose to drive themselves to the local courts, and the county gets all the savings from them not using county cars to do that. And we'll gladly pay them the mileage rate to drive their own car, because it's still a huge savings to the county, not having 5 or 6 attorneys in a fleet. So those are my those are the instant, what I might call, in my mind, low hanging.
And that's like a global picture, because I couldn't figure out why an ADA going to the front court as a public defender had to have a county car and ask the public defender to take us home. Doesn't make sense. But well,
And when I was on DPW, Melissa and I looked at, we carry enough cars for everybody if everybody needed one at once, but they never do, and with a little scheduling, you could cut.
and so we think we can cut fleet somewhat and still have plenty of cars, and
I truly believe it.
Did you mention the estimated savings by doing the fleet reduction?
I would have to go through to see what all the fleet billing, they're scattered throughout each of the departments. I'd have to slice them out of the budget and kind of get a handle on what that might look like.
Okay, thanks.
Can you give us a ballpark guess?
We could look at what the revenue is in carpool and maybe have it. It might be a good,
I don't know if you can have it.
Quarter.
worst.
Well, because of the sheriff's got.
It's because we're talking just fleet.
Quarter.
Yeah.
So
Quarter.
One of the things we were looking at the other, Brian did the other day, if you're looking at net cost of our DSS, how much is it going up over the past 5 years? $8 million?
Yeah, something close to that.
Now.
5 years, it was 5 years, from 20 to 25 was our.
So also you look at it, when we look at DSS, we say we'll only pay 25% of it, but the 25% keeps on adding up and adding up and adding up.
Well, and my concern there is, are we enabling people to live off the system instead of just giving assistance to actually want to go get a job and live better? Because if we're creating the problem, we aren't the solution anymore. That's serious to me.
So in our vehicles, that wouldn't necessarily, how much does it cost us per mile for the vehicles that are used in this role, not the sheriff cars and all that, but all the Washington County cars?
is it 69 cents a month?
Yeah, and they're all.
Does it cost us?
Yeah.
Do we end up spending? Because we would get reimbursed for 67 cents a mile or something like that for personal use, right? But how much do we end up spending? Because if you offer people 75 cents a mile when they're using their personal vehicle, because it's costing us $1 a mile, maintain those fleets.
So I would love to entertain an incentive program that you would incentivize the employees, right? That makes a lot of sense. Because even offering a higher rate than we pay ourselves it still has all that cost avoidance attached to it, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a competition there for sure.
And so what's really nice in what you're saying is the fact that the only reason we use county cars is a liability when we're transporting people, children.
And that wouldn't change.
And that would, so we do have to have a certain amount for that.
Right.
But yeah, there is a way to probably.
I don't, to answer Charlie's question, I don't know, keeping track of that metric, total number of miles.
We looked at that back when we revamped it, but I haven't looked at it just lately, but that is an interesting concept to do it again or to do it yearly. That's what we always know.
Because just the cost avoidance in one new car is in the 40,000 in avoidance of one purchase.
Yeah.
And I can't even get traction on one.
And so, Charlie, what we have a system where in DSS, when we buy cars, it's 25% is what we have to pay. So we can put the total price of the car in on one side, 75% revenue on the other side. And so I don't remember how many cars we can totally buy, but we've been in the practice of buying 3. And in 3 years, you can bring them back into your fleet or into the pool itself. So it's worked well. So as you shrink the fleet, though, you'll get more miles per car, and I get all that, unless you get people using their own vehicles. But we're to the point where there's 2 years in a row, 40 cars 1 year and 32 the other. Part of that was with ARPA money because we had cars that were done. I mean, we actually sold cars before they came in because they were done. You just didn't want to put more money in. So I think our costs that year, I think we actually paid out of county dollars for 10 cars and got 40. So we maximized everything we could. That's not a normal year or not supposed to be.
Yeah, but Brian, like when we're selling those cars that are done, and we've done this and paid a half of Claudium on this, we're selling 11-year-old, 12-year-old cars that only have 40,000 miles on them because they've been sitting. So
And
we
that's
wasted
why,
that car.
that's what the fleet problem is. That's what Al's referring to. If they're in the pool, they keep moving the fleet. They may be parked every day. And you're like, what do they have a fleet car for? One was being used for a storage locker at one point. We're like, why? Thing had 5,000 miles on it and hadn't left the yard. Well, it needs to be ready.
Just remember, if the department he's talking about has 14 cars and we go down to 10, If you go down 4 cars at 25%, you still save 100% of 1 car.
Yeah.
Right, 4 cars at 25% is still 1 car. You've still gone down 1 car and reducing them 14, right? So there's conversations that are uncomfortable, but they're there.
Now, are we all in agreement what Al is saying is accurate numbers, and if so, do we wanna do it? That's where we're at, right? Is that what this is all about, this
We already
conversation?
had them for 1 million.
But by not reducing anything.
Right.
If
So
you
you're
reduce
asking
their,
them to
reduce the
reduce-
interfund transfer and interfund.
Right, so I don't know how bad you wanna hit highway, I mean, it is the easiest one to hit, because.
And again, it looks like I'm picking on highway and I'm
Right.
not, it's just, that's the discretionary money that we have.
Right, and that's why we put that list on the table at the public works.
Right.
Right.
Hopefully you'll have that list.
The options we have for the car wages, if they start managing properly, we have to take, a department, we have to take 4 or 5 cars away from them. If it's sitting there, not getting the mileage, there's always the option of having a contractor, someone you can rent cars from. To fill in that week or 2 weeks, whatever there may be.
And I still truly believe, Sam, that we are oversized. We're sized to the worst day that might happen twice in 360.
I agree with you 100% of that, but there are options, should we come back and it doesn't meet that, or that one or 2 options. come
Well,
up.
like you said, you can just take their own damn.
Yeah, well,
You know, that's.
Personal vehicle.
Yeah,
depends if they're transporting. that.
Good stuff, Al.
Right.
Thank you.
transport, you always wanna make sure they have a good.
Is there any other
What are we doing?
departments that we can just about ding all the other departments?
Some of the damn stuff is mandated, we ding them as far as we think we can, but we'd like to go further. Well, and that's the problem, we have these joint meetings. It's hard for me to go to the department that's watching it and said, oh, no, they're gonna override the cap, why would I give you? You know, they don't say it, but you know, they're thinking it. So if we're not in here saying, hey, we'd like to, you know, cut that a little or whatever, we're live. You know, nobody's believing they have to cut a thing. I mean, I sent the letter in June when we discussed it the first time to just get 3% of your net cost down. I'm not sure there's 2 departments that actually met that criteria. But it's tough in real small departments, but in a big department, you'd have thought a 3% cut, but most of them went up. One department was like $1.5 million budget and the 3% cut equaled 2,700. It doesn't math for me, but that's what I got. So.
If we're in the mood to cut, I've got another place I'm gonna suggest. we cut.
Dan Shaw.
And that is in our sheriff's department. We just signed a contract with, or in the process, signing contract with Whitehall, right? For 4 patrolmen and 4 police cars. What if we only hire 3 rather than 4? And designate, and then save a car too, and give them their 4 up in Whitehall under contract. And it'd be the one less patrolling in the county, but they've been patrolling through Whitehall anyway, a certain amount. So really, you aren't cutting anything back, but you're saving quite a bit of money. And I don't know how you'd run that number, but that number isn't just simply a payroll and a car. There's more to it than that.
You have to have a contract.
It almost, but you can still provide them with the 4 people. So I'm saying, under contract, you can meet the contract, but you're pulling 1 out of the county, but you're not reducing any patrolmen. Nobody's losing a job. And all there is savings all the way around. And I bet you that number is gonna come up well over $100,000, because it was over 400 to go with 4 men. And now we're going with 3, but we're getting the generation of 4, plus we're saving 1. I think it might be 200,000 if you run numbers.
We have to
through
cut
that.
someone in order.
No, you wouldn't have to cut. Right now, he said that he hasn't gotten filled.
Oh, so you're saying, so some of that has to come out of staffing pattern, which is the same thing.
Right, yeah, but
Still-
you're not, nobody's losing their job.
Yeah, no, I wanted to make sure I understood.
They started October 1st. The
But
contract
they-
was signed and they started covering Whitehall October first.
Yes, and you still can do it, and so they're
No.
doing it.
So they're already
Patrol
doing it, what he's
is-
saying.
They're already doing what.
Without adding.
Really, I
Right.
think without eliminating Whitehall, I think if you just cut to the chase, Dan is saying the sheriff needs to cut one patrol. That's really what it is. That's all he's saying. The sheriff needs to cut one patrol. That's all it is.
I think what he's saying is only add 3, don't add 4. He's not actually doing
Well,
it.
no,
It's not
the
a cut,
contract.
We have a contract for 4.
which has already been executed and
Right.
they're performing it right now.
That's
Sheriff
correct.
Murphy wants to add 4 more patrolmen to honor that contract.
Right.
On his work. ethic.
Right.
He's saying, we only add 3, we're not adding 4.
There's a
Right, which is the
schedule
same thing.
that they've got, and I've gotta
Same
look
thing.
at it.
But you worded
But
that.
there's
way,
not-
it doesn't-
I think there's only,
Right.
I don't know exactly who's, I think there's one man on during the day, one man on, and nobody covers from 3 to 5. And,
I still say you can do it,
yeah, I know. But
and you're
they're
not gonna hurt, and it's gonna help us. I mean, if we're into really cutting, we need to look at alternatives, and we really need to be serious about that. I did not support cutting on a highway unless you're ready to cut everywhere. And if you're ready to cut everywhere, I'll support cutting on a highway. But if it's gonna be just selective, because it's easy, like Al says, it's low hanging fruit, let's get into some of the higher fruit.
What is the difference in the pay grade between supervisor and patrolman? And there's a reason why I'm asking.
Supervisor, you supervisor?
No, on a,
No.
Oh.
I was gonna say, you don't wanna know that number.
I knew what you meant, John.
in the sheriff's department,
Between the deputy and the sergeant?
yes.
Okay. I was having more fun with the
Well,
other
Melissa's-
question.
While Melissa's looking that up, can you go to a department and specifically say, all right, they have 10 job type, they have 10, I'm gonna pick on DXS because they have the most in the same position. If they have 10 slots, is it year over year over year, they only ever have 8 filled, or they only ever have 9 filled? I understand that we budget to the staffing pattern, but if year after year after year, a position like that is always open, why aren't we taking advantage of some of that?
So the biggest problem there is sometimes they're totally full, sometimes they're half full. It changes
But I
all the
mean,
time.
somewhere, is there
Could you
somewhere?
figure out the
Yeah.
year you could actually take one? Yes, that probably could be done.
Is
If
it-
they've done it 10 years in a row.
Great,
Right.
if on average it's only 7 and 10 slots, or only 6 and 7 slots, I mean, I think you could cut that down. If
And I
you
think-
continually breakage left, but is that ended up?
Well, that
being
comes back to
fund
there's
balance that
3
you
quarters.
want?
You're only saving 25% of the.
Still
that
trying to
total
save the
person.
money now, you can't have
So-
everything.
And we're in the midst of also, we will be hiring a new commissioner next year, which may revamp the whole system. So I don't know how far I wanna go down that road before whoever we hire as a new commissioner is. Because maybe we need people, it's according to what their philosophy will be.
So the push and pull that the budget officer and I have to answer Cassie's opinion. So here's,
It was a question.
it was an opinion. Because here's, and I'm not, again, I tease a little bit, but I'm not being facetious. The problem is we budget to the staffing pattern and I don't freak out because I know if he appropriates 3 million in fund balance, that really means 2. If you now budget to the bodies, he's now got to remember that I don't have that million.
That breakage.
And 2 now has to mean 2.
Right.
So there's a push and pull between the appropriated fund balance. So all you've traded for those positions is legacy costs and what he can appropriate out of fund balance. So you have to decide that that's actually a balancing act that is worth it.
Right, that's a
Especially-
balancing act that needs to be public, because it's the
Yes.
first thing people say it. There's so many damn people up there, do you need them all?
Right.
And so if you're validating why you're doing it, cause it's still benefiting the taxpayer when the job is empty, that's one thing, but if you have a position that's open forever and we're budgeting for it, you're just robbing, you're moving from left pocket
So
to right
like, we have
pocket.
one,
so-
for instance.
We're not levying for it.
We have one, for instance, in the county attorney's office, but he needs an attorney. I mean, it's.
No, I get that.
Right.
So to Al's argument, what you're saying, Brian's pulling 5 million for fund budget.
In March, you come in and say, hey, guess what? We only used 3 million on this.
That's exactly what I'm
If
saying.
he appropriates 5, I hear 4. I just offered you 2, and I'm more comfortable with 2.
Right, but I mean, at the end of the day, we may not have pulled 5 million out.
Right,
The hope is always that you don't.
Right.
right.
Always.
But you're also calculating the breakage and we have the personnel cost.
That's what he's talking about.
Right, that's on top.
And so that's like the other discussion, like with sales tax. I try to keep it low and hope that we achieve more. But at the same time, I could go all the way to 31, add 1.5 million and take 1.5 million off fund balance, but the result's exactly the same. If it doesn't show up, it still comes out of your fund balance. So you try to stay conservative to not get the slap that you really didn't intend to get. That's.
And the part that supervisor Heft never liked, but it's the reality. Until you get the appropriated fund balance to 0, you can't take anything off the levy. You have to chip away that block before you can even get to a levy discussion. Right, so until you actually have a balanced budget, you can't even talk about the levy. Because he always wanted to show some kind of relief to the taxpayer. But so until you get that 5 million down to 0, you can't even entertain conversations about flat tax growth or even decreases, right? So that's a conversation again that's uncomfortable, the reality. Until you prepare a balanced budget, you can't talk about the.
Supervisor Roselle, to answer your question, in 2025, there's a $4.15 difference between a 2-year deputy and a 2-year sergeant.
About 25,000 per year, is that?
That's per hour, you're saying.
Yeah, 4 hours an hour, 28 hours.
About 2,000, yeah. About 2,000 hours.
8,000. 2,000 hours a year.
Right,
2,080
right.
times
So
4 hours.
it's here.
Right.
Is that union control?
Yes,
Also,
yes,
so we have no control over that.
over the rate of
Well,
pay.
we do when we,
We negotiate.
When we negotiate
After that.
to clarify,
I'm just hearing a lot of,
I feel like-
a lot more chiefs than.
it's true everywhere.
I was thinking that Al got sidetracked, got down to 5, I'm sure he has more than 5.
Those, no, I gave you the ones that are like literally,
No healthcare stuff, no.
so
insurance
we
stuff.
work every day to try to keep the healthcare costs under control. There's everything that's happened in healthcare, we can't control.
We leave a meeting thinking we saved 100,000, we come back the next week and see we lost 5.
While, while the increase on our self-insured fund is uncomfortable, we saw the numbers that it could have been if we hadn't gone self-insured, so they're worse. And you look at our retirees resolution you passed today, we're not self-insured. We haven't passed that yet.
No, I was gonna say, we haven't done
We haven't done that.
Oh, there's more bad news coming. So the retirees' health insurance rate is up considerably, and that's not something that we're self-funded for, again, out of our control,
Is that what you call considerable? 36%?
considerably.
So I guess I don't even have to bring my item to you. Right, is it just showing up?
I'll just let it out of the.
Well, I'm glad we didn't
You
forget
mentioned
it.
it earlier.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you go to the other on the
Yeah,
agenda?
we'll go to the other.
Okay, so as we've already talked about, Washington County, the retiree health insurance. So we currently have Anthem. That contract is up for renewal. And the rate has gone up 36% for this year. And then just a little, I wanted to give you just a little background for that. As was already mentioned in this meeting, a lot of the reason for that increase is the Inflation Reduction Act and Center for Medicare and Medicare Services. Both of those resulted in more benefits, very robust, actually, benefit increases. And carriers, because of those increases, have to cover more expenses, so therefore the premiums are going up. So that's why you're all seeing that at the town level as well. 36 is actually, that increase is lower than a lot that I've seen. I think the average Benetech told us was about 42 or 45% increase, but some of the quotes that we got back were over 100% increase. So I mean, it's just phenomenal, the increases for this year. So this is the Medicare Advantage plan that's offered to all of the county retirees. Back in January 2024, when we had Humana, we had a 6.7% increase. The premium back then was $297 a month. It went up to $317. Last spring, we learned that a lot of the area hospitals, those that were affiliated with Albany Med, were not taking Humana anymore. So we received a lot of phone calls from retirees, a lot of concerns that they wouldn't have coverage when they visited those hospitals. So at that time, we had several meetings with Benetech and talked about options. So at that point, we went out to bid. Anthem came back with a significant decrease, and that's why we switched mid-year, which is something we don't usually do.
And what was that now?
The premiums went down to $216.83 with Anthem. But so with this 36% increase, we're still under what we were a year ago. I mean, if it makes you feel a little bit better. Yeah, it does make you feel a little better.
That's an increase, it's not a decrease.
I know. We had 6 months where they did experience a decrease, but now it's going back to a number they're more familiar with. But bottom line is, it's a 36% increase on top of what they're paying right now. So what I would like to do is renew the contract with Anthem, and this would be contract beginning January 1st, 2025. And if you approve this, it would require a resolution for the chairman to sign the contract with Anthem.
And we have some good news. It's already in the budget.
Yes, it is in the budget.
I'll make the motion. Moved by James. By Sarah. Any
I
discussion?
got a second.
What's the dollar value on it, Brian? It's in the budget. How much of it? I just curious.
I got so many numbers in my head that off my head, I just. I can bring it up. Yeah.
Another one of the things that we don't.
Right.
I mean, the annual premium cost is 1.2 million, which is a almost $40,000 increase from what we have right now, but that's the total.
Right,
That's
so a
not
quarter
just
of
the
that's paid by
county
them, right?
Right.
So it's something.
Yeah, not quite 4% over the. Yeah.
Right. Amazing. Wow.
Stop paying that.
So we'll go back to,
They did.
We gotta vote it in.
oh, all in favor, say aye.
I
We got the last step. So we'll go back and have a discussion with. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a motion. We already did that. We're good. We're better than the same.
Well, Nolan moved, Roselle second.
So we'll go back and, have another discussion with them. And see if we can get more, I mean, I can just take it out, but I like working with departments so we don't mess up their whole department. So I'll go back and have some more discussion unless you guys wanna give me orders to go remove something.
No, go
Or
ahead.
remove a patrolman, if you wanna do that, you can.
Have
Yes,
a
we're
discussion.
asking
It's gonna have
questions.
discussion with our highway on that.
What was that?
Are you gonna have discussions with the sheriff too?
Yep. Is there other things you would like?
Is there anywhere we can go after? Possible?
We can, but that takes time.
Unfortunately, the Supervisor Nolan's comments, that's gonna be a January 2025.
Oh, sorry, I left.
That one's a hard one to fix and then.
No, but I mean, but I think I commend him on saying that we need to start in January if we're gonna make any kind of substantial change.
And we're gonna have to look at it blanketly. You know, there will be some departments that you're like, oh yeah, they're using them and there's, you know, they're doing great. There's gonna be other ones you're gonna say, why is that happening? But we're gonna have to be able to look at just all of them and not say, oh, well, this is my favorite person or my favorite department, and we can't do that. We're gonna have to find a way to make a policy and program that works.
Brian, are there plow trucks? Are we, what, do we going to contract anytime too soon in ordering 4 or 3 plow trucks in the next year?
They were already ordered. But for
Hopefully
this
they're
year,
ordered before
it's-
they hit the other.
right, we try to now order before this price increases, so I think we ordered below or before July 1st, ones that were in this year's budget. And next year's, we'll see where we're at. And the biggest problem there is they're so slow coming in. So if you order one now, you can have enough trucks broke down that they don't even come in to actually plow around.
But to go from 4 plow trucks to 3 plow trucks, when would that be?
We have not had that discussion.
If the decision was made, it would be next year.
For next year's order.
It'd be next year's order for delivery in 26.
That's fine.
You're like 18 months out on these trucks.
That could be next.
For next-
And you'd love to get that ahead of
For
having an
next
electric
year,
well.
Right,
believe
that's,
me.
that's the
I
part I
don't-
want to
yeah.
caution there.
If there's a year we're gonna
Get
cut
that
trucks,
figured.
let's do it that year.
So I'm just saying this.
Yes, because you're budgeting now for that purchase.
And on the subject of electric trucks, I don't know if everybody heard, it just got a reprieve, it's not 2025, now it's 2026.
What if we don't do it?
Right, but that's what I'm
We
saying,
got
is
another
you might not want to mess with. the
Same
truck.
with the electric buses.
No, I'm not even-
Still do it.
Yeah.
But that's something we need to consider. You might not want to mess with this year's truck.
Well, right, that's kind of where I'm at. I would rather not than get made to buy. Well, the worst was the scenario of how they wanted to do it. The way they wanted to do it was add an electric truck in that cost double and split the cost, so we all paid the same amount, which that's a disaster for our system.
Right,
So,
but you might want to have that shorten the truck for another year out to try and get in ahead of those electric. That's an unbelievable cost.
No way it
Switch that.
Not gonna happen.
I'll just.
That
take it back.
You pull out of ours and you go.
I'll bet I can carry on that.
Okay, is there anything else?
Can't run them out.
Are we good? We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Even the.
Really